days. I mean, John Forth, this thing's been up when the whole market's down. It's been up no matter what's going on with politics. It's been, I mean, it just goes up and up and up.
Kelly, this is like the analyst equivalent of drag racing, I think, and it makes me incredibly nervous. I mean, these target prices on stocks, we had an analyst on earlier who double upgraded Micron, right? In part just because of the exuberance in the markets. Once these guys set a price target, then when the stock exceeds that, they've got a really tough decision what to do. It's almost like they've got to justify or abandon, you know, this number that they went with before. And I don't know, like if you like Tesla and you've got a justification for that and you've got a thesis behind it, in a way, like as an investor, just embrace that. Be careful of these price targets and believing that it's going to hit a number or deserves to be at a particular number. And I think just embrace what you believe is going to happen in the economy.
1,100% gain in 2 years. There's not even anything else to say. You just rattle off the stats and wait to see what happens with this one. And we're all going to find out because it's in the S&P. But let's move along from the very big to the very small. Sources are telling CNBC that the vegan milk brand Oatly is planning an IPO this year that could raise $1 billion. This is new numbers show that Poshmark, Petco, and Affirm are also seeking multi-billion-dollar valuations for their upcoming IPOs this year. Leslie, I mean, people kind of rolling their eyes at Oatly saying, oh, this is definitely a sign of froth. Is it any more, you know, does it stand out any more so than any of the other names that we've seen come to market in the past year?
It does, because that's a really good pun. If you've had their barista edition for Oatly, you would know that the froth is there if you want it to be. But no, I think a lot of people recognize that companies who are going public right now are getting tremendously high valuations, and that's why they are going public now. I've spoken with a bunch of sources who say they've talked to CEOs who are moving up their IPOs. They were maybe targeting more of a summer listing or an early fall listing. Now they're looking to go public in the first quarter of the year because they see that that IPO window is wide open, and they are worried about that IPO window shutting. You can see there just a list of some of the names that are due to come within the next few weeks, with the exception perhaps of Oatly and Robinhood. I mean, Affirm just set terms for its IPO. Petco set terms for its IPO this morning. Poshmark this morning. No guidance right now on Robinhood or Coinbase for their IPOs. I'm told Playtika is soon, Qualtrics is soon. So usually in any other year, we would see kind of a, you know, maybe a quieter start to the year as people get their books in order and things like that before debuting. Not so this year. Everybody around this IPO ecosystem is up and running and, you know, pulling long hours. No rest for
Tim,
the IPO
take
ecosystem.
Your pick. You saw the names there that Leslie mentioned. Is Oatly at the top, bottom, or where?
Look, Kelly, you know how much I love oat milk, and look, when we look at kind of plant-based foods and all the success of Beyond Meat, I think this is a great time, and I think COVID winners. Think about Petco. Obviously, that's a secular trend that's been going on, I think, for some time. But pets have been great friends, and then you know we saw what Robinhood was able to generate in terms of momentum around the market and their impact on the market around COVID, and another round of stimulus checks. I mean, look out. I think the time is hot. I think it's a good time for Robinhood to come through. This is what happens when money is free, and it's easy to be cynical about this. I certainly have been. But some of these names, I actually think the valuations are going to go higher based upon the current trend we're in.
Quick last word, John Ford. I'm curious what you make of it all.
There's no rule that you have to buy something. Like this isn't a secret Santa for investors. So yeah, I mean, some of these things have gotten pretty expensive. Just, you know, don't feel like don't justify the price that you pay for one thing by the fact that it's you know, not as expensive as everything else. You don't have to buy right now. Just, you know.
That's a good point. I miss Secret Santa. I haven't had, I mean, that was like the classic office party thing, right? Like who does that? I miss it. It's just not the environment anymore.
We can do
let's
it by
talk
mail.
Some pot stocks, especially Tim. I know, it's just not the same. It's just not the same. Since you're here, Mr. Seymour, it's on a good day because we have a lot of these cannabis names flying high after the runoff or giving people the sense that Congress is going to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level. And in just the past hour, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced a proposal to legalize cannabis. He thinks it's going to generate more than $300 million in tax revenue. Of course, states are salivating at that prospect. Tilray, Tim, is up 21%.
Yeah, so let's talk about New York and let's talk about the U.S. because I think those are the real important issues. The perverse dynamic of cannabis investing for a lot of folks, and it's an emotional issue for investors, is that the Canadian cannabis names tend to get more focus on a day when it's U.S. news. Look, the reason some of these names are outperforming is because they're listed on the U.S. exchanges. The good news for the U.S. Cannabis industry is that the States Act, after Georgia, it really looks like it could be a second half event for the cannabis industry. And what that means is capital markets, and it means listing on exchanges for some of the biggest and most profitable cannabis companies in the world. That's the news. Around New York, I think the key for Cuomo and the New York state government has been about criminal and social justice. But look, the East Coast is about to go full legal, and New York's not going to be outflanked by New Jersey. And I think it's just a matter of time. So it's a huge day. It's a huge day in cannabis, and there's a lot more to go.
Anything you'd add to that, John?
You know, my experience with cannabis is about as deep as yours, Kelly. So I really don't have anything to add.
Exactly.
Come on.
Yeah. We're just going to let Tim handle this one. Yeah. Tim, you're with a bunch of
You can
losers.
like the stocks and not have to endorse the product, folks.
Yeah, right.
We're not
be sure
smoking
to watch Closing Bell today. You can catch their exclusive interview with the CEO of Aurora Cannabis as they dive into it. That's at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And finally, we'll see if anyone has more experience with Tiffany, but they just reported holiday sales at a record during the pandemic. I mean, just unbelievable. Overall sales are up about 2%, but there was huge growth in China. The jeweler says global net sales were up just like a percentage point or two. Asia Pacific up 20%, China up 50%, and yes, surging e-commerce helped too. Leslie, up 80%.
Yeah, it's amazing the resiliency of China this year. This is just the latest data point there. Also, e-commerce was so surprising to me because I would have thought jewelry would have been kind of one of those last remnants of, you know, going to a physical store to pick out this high-ticket item. People are clearly buying diamonds and bracelets and earrings and necklaces and all sorts of things online during this holiday season when they feel that it's not as safe to go in store. So I think that is a remarkable change, and I wonder if that's going to be sticky as things start to look a little bit safer from a physical retail standpoint.
And Tim, to me, it's all about China and how much corporate America and any businesses are salivating over that kind of growth and exposure. And at a time when we're talking about whether to delist Chinese companies and everything that's going on in Hong Kong, I mean, 50% sales growth in mainland China, that ignores a lot. I think that makes you pretty eager to overlook a lot of the other problems you might have politically in dealing with that country.
Yeah, and at a time emerging markets are breaking out, Kelly, we're reminded why this consumption story in emerging markets, especially in luxury goods, has been a cycle that's now coming back again. 5 years ago, this was the story why you wanted to invest in Tiffany. And as talked about, if you look back at those third quarter numbers that we got in November, 70% China constant currency growth. The dynamics there are extraordinary, and I think the e-commerce dynamic only helps the multiple of a company that I think is also moving higher.
John Fort, final word.
My favorite thing about this Tiffany LVMH thing is the shotgun wedding aspect of it. I mean, you know, at first they were supposed to get together like November 2019. Then LVMH is like, oh, no, material things have changed. I don't think you're so attractive anymore. And then, you know, there's this comeback, and China likes Tiffany, and so LVMH likes Tiffany again, and on January 6th, they're getting together. Only like a $400 million difference in the initial size of the dowry, and that legal shotgun, I guess, made it happen.
I know, John Fort, you look like a superhero today, by the way. It's just a great look overall. We'll leave it there with our John, Leslie Picker, and Tim Seymour. Thank you very much. We'll open it on Zoom or rapid fire. We've got some breaking news on Washington. Let's get right to Sue Herrera. Sue, what's going on?
Kelly, we have several developments on Capitol Hill. Let's start with the fact that 2 buildings on Capitol Hill have now been evacuated or are in the process of being evacuated. It is one part of the Library of Congress. The other part is the Cannon House, which is an extremely large building. All of this is happening as Capitol Police are instructing people how to evacuate those buildings and where to go against a backdrop of what you're looking at right now live, that picture out of Washington, D.C. Those are pro-Trump protesters that have been moving down the street from where they were encamped earlier this afternoon. So those are two parts of the breaking news that we have. And then the Senate is now debating objections lodged by senators from Arizona to the electoral vote count. That is also going on Capitol Hill. None of this is necessarily related. However, as you look at Senator Ted Cruz taking the podium there to object to that vote, we do have evacuations going on in two buildings on Capitol Hill. And we will keep you posted. No word yet on why they are evacuating those buildings, but Capitol Police are going door to door in both of those buildings. Kelly, back to you.
Yeah, we are all watching those events this afternoon. Sue, really appreciate it. Sue Herrera. Up next, the Dow and the S&P are hitting record highs regardless. The Dow is hovering near session highs right now, up 600 points, and this with nearly $300 billion of PPP funds about to become available to help small businesses. But some of them have lingering concerns about the program. What the rollout and the demand for aid could look like is coming up. Don't forget, you can watch us live on the go using the CNBC app. We're back in a moment.
Rapid Fire is brought to you by Lexus. Experience amazing.
Incomparable design makes it beautiful. State-of-the-art technology makes it brilliant. The visionary Lexus NX.
Lease the 2021 NX 300 for $359 a month for 36 months.
Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Good night, buddy.
Armed. Stay.
Sleep soundly tonight from the brand that more families trust for quality and timeless protection, ADT.
Dinner, a constant struggle. Wasting time buying food you don't need. Life getting in the way of eating well. Unable to satisfy your picky eater. Stuck in a rut making the same recipes over and over again. Hit refresh with HelloFresh this year. Pre-portioned ingredients, step-by-step recipes, delicious meals that everyone enjoys. Ready to change your routine?
Hit refresh with HelloFresh. Use code TV10 for 10 free meals, including free shipping.
Selling a home is hard, stressful, and can cost thousands, even in the best of times. But today, the best real estate agent matters more than ever. A HomeLight, MoveSafe certified agent sells homes faster for more money and is committed to keeping you and your family safe. From providing things like virtual showings to digital closings and following the most current health guidelines. Is your real estate agent MoveSafe certified? Find out today at HomeLight.com.
Heading into retirement, you want to follow your passions. Bright House Smart Care is a hybrid life insurance and long-term care product. It protects your family while providing long-term care coverage should you need it. Talk to your advisor. Bright House Financial. Build for what's ahead.
Welcome back to the Exchange. Mobile gaming stocks are rallying this hour, and that's on comments by New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Let's check in with Contessa Brewer for more details on the story. Contessa?
Hi, Kelly. Yeah, he's surrendering his long-standing opposition to mobile sports gambling. He says the state's need for new tax revenue is behind his decision. And let's look at the ways these gaming stocks have reacted. And mind you, this has calmed down from earlier today. We're seeing Boyd Gaming up 5.5%, DraftKings up almost 5%, Bally's up almost 4%, Churchill Downs, MGM is popping as well. It's up more than 4%. And I want to bring your attention to GAN, which is a tech provider for multiple gaming companies like Churchill Downs, FanDuel, and Wynn. It just launched on the NASDAQ last year. Up, well, right now it's up, as you can see, almost 12% today. CEO Dermot Smurfit told me today GAN has multiple clients with market access in place for New York, but he told me, look, the opportunity in expanded tax revenue for the state would come from legalizing iGaming. That is casino games that you can play on your phone, Kelly. That's where the real growth potential is here.
All right, although, again, for New York, they have to balance that between their need to support the casinos as well. Quick comment on that, Contessa?
Well, Cuomo says he's not doing this to make money for the casinos. He says, you know, we may have to look at this like the way other states run sports gambling through their lotteries. And we've had analyst notes out on that today already. Carlo Santarelli from Deutsche Bank was pointing out that there are 3 other states that run sports gambling through their lottery. That would be bad news for the casinos. But in the meantime, you have the governor's own office sending out a note saying, look, we're going to have the licensees apply, but they have to have a relationship with existing casinos. So that would limit the number of people who want to get in. New York potentially could be the biggest sports betting state in the nation.
It could be, but again, a delicate dance with some of those upstate casinos. Contessa, thank you very much. Contessa Brewer is watching that action for us. Also, another round of PPP money will be available soon for small businesses. But is it too little too late? Kate Rogers is here with more on these efforts, as we might hear from the president-elect on it next hour. Kate.
Kelly, that's right. The SBA says it will be releasing its latest rules for the program today, and lenders are expecting a launch potentially by early next week, although that hasn't been formally announced just yet. The $284 billion in PPP funding will look similar and different for borrowers this time around. Now, this new package has set-asides for small businesses with under 10 employees, as well as $30 billion in loans from smaller community lenders, CDFIs, and MDIs. Advocates are hopeful that businesses that truly need the aid are able to access it early on this time around, including minority-owned businesses, which are more likely to be non-employer firms.
And so to have a set aside for those lenders by themselves of $15 billion is also very helpful to ensure that we're getting funds to the businesses who were left out of that initial round of funding and who have been struggling for a while and that are in communities that are also being hardest hit both by the pandemic and the economic fallout of the pandemic.
Second draw loans are available if you can demonstrate a 25% decline in revenue, and restaurants, they can borrow a bit more, although they weren't given the rescue fund that the industry had really pushed and asked for. There's also streamlined forgiveness now for loans under $150,000. But while advocacy groups are hopeful for many businesses, Kelly, this could just be coming weeks and months too late to save their operations. Back over to you.
And Kate, what are we hearing from the president-elect? Does he have concerns about the way this program is structured right now?
I think he's going to be focusing on getting the aid to the groups that we mentioned, minority-owned businesses, businesses that missed out on the first time around, those truly small firms with perhaps no employees or under 10 employees. That'll be a big focus. And Kelly, there should be some pretty high demand. The NFIB says about 90% of its members that receive loans have used them in full, and just under half say they would go back for second draw PPP loans, which you can do if you demonstrate that you have a 25% revenue decline, which is really important. So we'll see.
Yeah, a lot of tweaks this time around, hoping that it reaches as many people as possible to be super effective. Kate, thank you. Our Kate Rogers keeping tabs on that story for us. That does it for the exchange today, but up next on Power Lunch is a whole lot more action. We're also going to hit what has been going on in New Hampshire. They've been one of the best COVID vaccination rates in the country, according to the CDC. The governor, Chris Sununu, will join us, talk about what they've been doing to get those vaccines out to as much of the population as possible. I'll join Tyler Matheson for that and a whole lot more on the other side of this quick break.
The Path Forward is sponsored by Adyen. Business, not boundaries.
It's hard work building a successful business. So make sure your payments platform is working just as hard. Adyen opens the door to innovative ways to pay, enhanced customer experiences, and new business opportunities, so you can focus on what you do best, growing your business. Stay a step ahead with the payments platform that adapts and evolves with you. Adyen. Business, not boundaries.
Of all the companies on the Fortune 500 in the year 2000, more than half no longer exist. Digital transformation isn't just a good idea. It's a matter of corporate survival. Enterprise AI enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable business problems to help you not just survive, but thrive. C3.ai. This is Enterprise AI.
Guys, is this your new normal?
My problem is right in the middle.
All right here. Lose the weight with Nutrisystem for Men. Lose up to 13 pounds in your first month. Lose weight now. Money back guarantee.
I got to eat all of my favorite foods.
Make Nutrisystem for Men your new normal.
That's all I did. I ate the food, I lost the weight.
Act now and save 50% off a month of food and shakes.
Go online or call 877-959-FIT8 to save 50% on a month of food and shakes.
Hey, Frank, our workers' comp insurance is expiring. Should we just renew it?
Yeah, sure. Hey there, small business owner. Pi Insurance here with some sweet advice to stop you from overpaying on workers' comp. Try Pi instead and save up to 30%. 30%, really? Get a quote in 3 minutes at easyaspie.com.
Wow, that is easy.
So, need another reminder? No, I'm good.
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah. Need workers' comp insurance? Get a quote in 3 minutes at easyaspie.com.
Get an edge. Invest like a pro. Access CNBC's live streams around the globe. Unparalleled access to CNBC experts. Actionable investor insight and ideas. Start your free trial today at cnbc.com/pro.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Power Lunch on this memorable, even historic day in America. Along with Kelly Evans, I'm Tyler Mathisen. Stocks are romping. The Dow up 600 points. And along with the S&P 500 hitting an all-time high, call it perhaps a resolution rally as investors look past political uncertainty of a sort rarely, if ever, seen in America before. And then there's this, the 10-year yield hitting its highest level since March, back above 1%. The minutes from the last Federal Reserve meeting came out seconds ago. Steve Leisman digging through that, and we will go to him as soon as he's been able to digest and has a little more to tell us. And this is all amid a dramatic day unfolding down in Washington, D.C. Don't hold your breath, but the Senate appears to be turning blue. Democrats could clinch control with 2 runoff wins in Georgia. They've got one. The other one's still too close to call. Meanwhile, Congress counts the electoral votes while thousands gather in the street to support the president. And we expect to hear from President-elect Biden over the next 30 minutes. So get ready, strap in. Power Lunch starts now.
Thank you, Tyler, and hi, everyone. We start with this unstoppable rally. With everything going on right now, we're still near session highs and record highs for stocks. Dow up about 600 points. Let's go to Bob Bassani for a look at what's moving right now. Bob?
And Kelly, a lot of moving parts today, but think of it this way. Stimulus and the vaccine rollout versus the virus and the taxes. That's the way to look at it. 4 kind of buckets here. Stimulus is the main mover of the market today, at least for the moment. The market's continuing to believe that stimulus is what matters. And you can see this in the broad group of infrastructure stocks like Martin, Marietta, Vulcan Materials, steel stocks like Nucor, material stocks like Freeport-McMoRan, broad industrials like Caterpillar and Deere. Look at those moves to the upside. That's stimulus right there. Elsewhere, how about energy? But both groups of energy, clean energy like the solar stocks, for example, like First Solar, SunPower moving and Plug well, but old school energy, fossil fuel, Apache and Chevron, because stimulus is going to push up more demand around the economy, and that's helping those fossil fuels with oil at a multi-month high. More stimulus applies higher rates as well. You heard Kelly mention that, but particularly a steeper yield curve. Regional banks, big regional banks like Regions Financial, PNC, and Zions are big beneficiaries of that. And again, there's a sector that's moving, as well as some of the big money center banks like Bank of America. Stimulus, number one thing will help is small caps. And if you look at small caps today, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about small caps value, small cap growth, it doesn't matter. They're all having a good day generically on the upside. Let's talk about tech. Is there any loser out there? Tech is down because of concerns about, number one, more regulation, and number two, tax implications. Maybe they're not talking about higher taxes on everyone because the economy is too weak, but guys, they're definitely going to be talking about higher capital gains taxes because nobody's going to fight in a big way about raising capital gains, particularly on people making $1 million and more a year. And that was one of the proposals that Biden had, guys, out there. Higher capital gains for people making more than $1 million a year. That has a chance of passing in one form or another, and you see that reflected in these mega cap stocks to the downside. Guys, back to you.
All right, very interesting, Bob. Bob Pisani, thanks. We are waiting for comments from President-elect Biden on the economy and probably on other things as well. We heard earlier from President Trump on Congress and its task of counting the electoral votes. And still, one Georgia race still too close to call. Let's go to Kayla Tausche for all the politics affecting your money today. Kayla.
Well, Tyler, at this hour on Capitol Hill, a joint session of Congress has broken into House and Senate chambers as they debate objections that arose from GOP lawmakers over the electoral results from Arizona. So looking at the Senate floor right now, we just had comments from the leaders of each party in the Senate where there was some rare bipartisanship between Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer on whether the president's claims have any basis in fact. McConnell saying that the president was unjustified in taking his fight against the election, which McConnell called not unusually close, to Congress and beyond the confines of the legal system, where even the president was overruled by his own handpicked judges.
I will not pretend such a vote would be a harmless protest gesture while relying on others to do the right thing.
Sadly, a small band of Republican objectors may darken the view of our democracy today, but a larger group of senators and House members from both sides of the aisle can send a message too. We are a country of laws and of not men.
And McConnell warning Republican colleagues against splitting into what he called separate tribes with separate facts. Meanwhile, down the mall, President Trump airing his grievances in front of his supporters at a rally nearby. And he was warning vengeance for Republicans who did not take his side in objecting to these results, namely Liz Cheney, who's the #3 Republican in the House. But with that victory nearly finalized and two Democratic runoffs, in Georgia, likely going the way of Democrats, the Biden-Harris incoming administration is already thinking about its agenda and how to move forward. We're expecting Georgia to be at the top of President-elect Biden's remarks when he speaks in just a few minutes. And we're also expecting Tyler and Kelly to possibly get some news on those $2,000 stimulus checks, which Biden said on Monday he would support if those two seats went the way of Democrats. And just this morning, Senator Schumer said that would be one of the first orders of business as well. So we will see what that speech says. We should also mention there are some protests happening down outside the Capitol. 2 buildings have been evacuated for staffers. We're still awaiting news on exactly why those were evacuated and what the facts around that situation are. But certainly there is a very heavy police and security presence on Capitol Hill on a very big day, and there's quite a bit of commotion downtown. Guys?
Kayla, one observation and one question. The observation is I listened to Senator McConnell's speech, and I have never, ever heard him rebuke the president in such strong, very, very strong terms. The observation is there looks like a very unruly scene outside the Capitol right now. What more can you tell us about these demonstrations and whether the security in and around the Capitol, the rings there, are strong enough to hold back what look like thousands of protesters?
Well, certainly the mayor of D.C. had been beefing up the security presence because of the rally that was being held in the speech given by President Trump. From what we've seen on Twitter and on social media, posts about some of these protests and demonstrations, they appear to be Trump supporters who are frustrated with the outcome and are trying to breach some of that those security perimeters around the Capitol. Unclear how successful or if they've been successful in doing so, but certainly that is something that we are watching. That is outside the Capitol building. The evacuations that we had heard about are outside the Madison, or inside the Madison and Cannon buildings, which are separate office buildings pertaining to the Capitol and the Library of Congress. So certainly that would seem to signify that something else is going on there as well. But Tyler, as we get more and it's nailed down, we'll certainly bring that to you.
Of course, under normal circumstances, Kayla, our offices in Washington are just a couple of blocks away from the Capitol. You would be right there in the middle of it. Now, of course, we're doing a lot of remote broadcasting. Kayla Tausche, we'll have you keep a tab on it and get back to you as needed. Thanks so much. Kelly.
Well, on top of everything else, the Fed minutes were just released with some pretty interesting headlines. Steve Leisman's been digging through them for us. Steve, what do we know?
Kelly, yes, amid all of this, the Fed had said at its meeting back in December that uncertainty around the economic outlook was indeed elevated. The vaccine reduced the downside risk, but the surge in pandemic represented increased downside risk. The pandemic was causing, as it had said in the past, tremendous human and economic hardship. A few said the Fed could increase asset purchases if the economy or the economic outcome was slower than anticipated. Economic activity, however, remained well below the levels at the beginning of the year. Economy, though, did show signs of resilience in the face of the pandemic, with a recovery that was stronger than anticipated. Recent indicators did signal the pace of the recovery had slowed when the Fed met back in December. Still seems to be the case. Now, there was, following inflation, the increase in consumer prices had been soft at that time, though it seems to have increased a bit since then. Now, on the issue of the balance sheet, some members said that once the goals were obtained of getting the economy back on track, several favored an eventual tapering of asset purchases. That's all I could find, Tyler, on that critical issue.
And when it gets back to what are the markers for it getting back to where the Fed would like it to be to begin that tapering, or do we know? I thought we knew.
No, we don't. We don't know that. Let me explain very quickly, Tyler. There's two main policy tools: the interest rate and there's the asset purchases. Right. The interest rate, the Fed has been pretty specific about the idea that inflation will run above it, and they want to average 2% inflation. That same tack is not necessarily attached to the idea of asset purchases. That's a bit of a squishier kind of, we're not really sure. And as you can see, I was hoping to find in the minutes some more detail on that. I think the Fed's going to have to come back and give us more information about exactly what you asked, Tyler. What would trigger a tapering? How will we know when we're there?
But to your point, which is very interesting, separate the rate decision and any rate moves from the tapering moves, which are a totally different thing. Steve Leisman, thank you. We'll probably be back to you sometime later this hour, I would guess. For more reaction now to the Fed minutes and the impact on the markets and the economy, let's bring in Alicia Levine, Chief Strategist and Managing Director with BNY Mellon Investment Management, Diane Swank, Chief Economist with Grant Thornton. Diane, let me just begin with you and get your reaction to what you are hearing and also to what you are seeing in the markets today. Why do you think the markets are moving up as strongly as they are?
Well, I think the first issue is what Steve pointed out is the delineation between what kind of conditions would constitute a rate hike, which is still, we're only talking about guidelines here. When you've got the rules dependent on who sits around the table, you don't know how those rules will change regarding rate hikes in the future, depending on how the people around the table change. So that's important. The other issue is separating the quantitative easing or the asset purchases and the tapering, which is likely to occur sooner than we actually see rate hikes, although the Fed still does not have a consensus on this. And I think it's really important to understand that the Fed spent a lot of time in their minutes talking about financial stability. And although they wouldn't go as far as saying we should be preemptive in sort of pricking bubbles or leaning against the wind, as was once the case in Europe in the ECB under Jean-Claude Trichet, I think it's important that the Fed is talking about this issue. And what's going on Capitol Hill with all the chaos, if we do see the Senate move over to the Democrats, and the reality that we're seeing in the markets today is because the Fed will not have to shoulder as much of the burden of fiscal aid and fiscal stimulus, which is more effective in dealing with the wake of the crisis and filling the hole left by COVID and getting us on a stronger recovery track. And I think that's what you're seeing in financial markets today, is that reaction to the idea that we could have a little more aid and stimulus on the other side, or even in just the immediate reaction to COVID than what we've gotten so far. And that ensures a stronger rebound once we get to herd immunity, which is now becoming a bigger challenge given the slow rollout of vaccines.
Alicia, let me turn to you and get your reactions to the minutes. I mean, the Senate, and then to the change in the Senate. It looks like the Senate is turning blue, not code blue, at least if you look at what the markets are doing, because the markets seem to like the idea that, as Diane pointed out, you may get more stimulus spending, you may get more infrastructure spending, and there are certain categories of stocks. Financials are benefiting today, certain categories of stocks that are doing very well, including the infrastructure ones.
Yeah, so I think the point of separating out the balance sheet from the rate hikes is really the interesting one. And I think the market was looking for a little bit more direction on what's happening with the balance sheet, because there's somewhat more clarity on what the conditions will be for a rate hike than for what will be the conditions for a tapering. And I suspect we will hear later on this year in 2021 about the tapering. The other issue that we haven't really discussed here is any kind of yield curve control. It's very clear that yields are moving higher, and that in some ways the market really underpriced this risk here for yields to move on further stimulus and a better than expected recovery in the real economy. And in many ways, the 10-year was the one asset class that was just really hanging out there, not moving towards the cyclical trade, which we saw pretty much everywhere in the currency markets, in the asset classes that were moving, in particular in the movement in the small caps. So yields are finally moving. The question is,
what does that tell you?
The Fed,
what does that tell you?
It tells you, look, the cyclical recovery is here. There was going to be a very strong recovery, particularly in the second half of the U.S. We're going to have value over tech. Cyclicals will work. Infrastructure will work. What's moving today will work. And also the U.S. dollar will be weaker. And therefore, the trade into overseas markets, including emerging markets, will be relatively stronger than the trade here in the U.S. Now, companies that have overseas revenue will do very well because of the weaker dollar. On the margin, the election results are supporting the trade that already began in September.
Why, Diane, quickly, is the dollar weaker? Is it because we're printing so many of them? You would think on the one hand, yes, that could explain it. On the other hand, if you have yields going up, you would think, and higher than in many places around the world, you would think that money would be coming into dollars.
Yeah, actually, this is kind of an interesting issue, is whether or not we see the dollar weakness persist. I actually think we might see a reversal in that. One of the things I think we're not really taking into account yet is the 2 steps back. We could even see a negative print unemployment on Friday, and the ground we lost as we deal with further containment measures, much like Europe has, as our hospitals are overwhelmed. This next wave with a more contagious variant of the virus really makes it a race. We're in a race between vaccinations and getting those in our arms and getting to herd immunity and not getting more variants out there. That's a really difficult issue for the Fed to traverse.
Herd on the street.
And for markets.
Diane Swank, thanks very much. Alicia Levine, thank you as well. Kelly.
Coming up, we're all over the big stories that are coming out of Washington today, from the official election count to the growing protests supporting President Trump. You can see those live images of the Capitol, where a lot of this is playing out right now and getting pretty violent in some cases. We'll monitor it, continue to follow that, and keep an eye on the markets, which are surging higher, with the Dow up just about 600 points. We'll get the very latest there and check in on the vaccine rollout, which is struggling to keep pace with expectations. The CDC did name New Hampshire among the top states, and we're going to speak with their governor, Chris Sununu, about what's working. Also, oil above $50 a barrel on strong demand again today on a strong session, and that has the energy stocks soaring. Pioneer Natural up more than 5%, and we're going to talk to the CEO about that and a whole lot more. There's a whole lot more Power Lunch right after this.
For skin as alive as you are, don't settle for silver. 7 moisturizers, 3 vitamins, 24-hour hydration. Gold Bond. Champion your skin.
We made USAA insurance for veterans like Martin. When a hailstorm hit, he needed his insurance to get it done right away. USAA. What you're made of, we're made for.
Make fitness routine with Pure Protein.
High protein, low sugar. Tastes great.
High protein, low sugar. So good.
High protein, low sugar. Birthday cake.
Try Pure Protein shakes with vitamins and minerals for immune support.
Unleash the beast! Man, it's a monster inside you! That monster got heat! You dedicated your whole life to be right here! Every play counts! Let's go! 3 on 3! 1, 2, 3!
The future of fitness isn't dumbbells. It's revolutionary digital weight that learns as you get stronger. So you can be your strongest. Visit tonal.com.
Ancient Egypt have great civilization, but the pharaohs suffered of cancer. Today, we have a new pyramid in Egypt. 357 children, Cancer Hospital Egypt. Your donation is very important to help in a child cure. It will change the tears on the faces of the children to a smile. Zahi Hawass.
The head of Operation Warp Speed discussing the slow vaccine rollout today. Let's go to Meg Terrell for more. Meg.
Hey, Tyler. Well, they were discussing that at noon today, and just now we got updated CDC numbers that speak to the hope that we've been hearing from officials that this pace of vaccination is going to pick up. The new numbers from the CDC show now we've distributed 17.3 million doses of vaccine, administered 5.3 million doses. That is a substantial increase from yesterday. We are now up to 30.7% of doses actually being used that have been distributed. That's up from 28.4% yesterday. So consistently, we've been hearing from health officials that they expect, yes, the first few weeks were a bit rocky, but that will pick up. Now, Health Secretary Alex Azar at that briefing today explaining a few things that they are doing to try to increase the pace. First, they say they're launching early a pharmacy partnership where you can actually use pharmacies across the country to try to get vaccines out to more people. Expanding the priority groups that can get access to the vaccine beyond just healthcare workers and people in nursing homes to people who are over the age of 75 or over the age of 65 or essential workers. He also cited that states could tap FEMA and the National Guard to try to get some help. He mentioned Florida as a state that he thinks is doing some things right. Here's what he said.
It would be much better to move quickly and end up vaccinating some lower priority people than to let vaccines sit around while states try to micromanage this process. Faster administration could save lives right now, which means we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
So the criticism really being that the vaccines had to go to these very specific groups. The message from the administration now is get those shots in arms however you can, guys.
And
all right, thank you very much.
At this point,
we're going to go to Caleb Tausche right now, Kelly, as we see, and Meg, thank you, as we get an update on what's going on in Washington. Caleb.
Well, Tyler, Capitol Police are on the House floor addressing the security incidents that are ongoing at the Capitol, saying we had a breach at the Capitol building. Reporters who are on site are tweeting pictures of protesters wearing red Make America Great Again hats who have breached the Capitol building and are outside the Senate chamber. The Senate has recessed, we are told, because of the protests, and the Vice President, Mike Pence, who is presiding over the counting of votes and the processing of some of these objections today, is said to be in his office in the Senate. So certainly it does appear that the supporters who were on the mall, who were agitating outside the Capitol building, then moved up the steps and into the building, with Capitol Police now addressing that in front of lawmakers on the House, saying there has been a breach of the Capitol building. Separately, we've also learned from our colleagues at NBC News that the RNC headquarters has been evacuated because of a suspicious package. Most of the RNC staff, according to NBC, is down in Florida for the group's winter meeting, but certainly there appears to be a wide range of incidents ongoing in Washington, various official federal buildings, as well as the RNC headquarters as well. Tyler?
All right, thank you very much, Kayla. Kelly?
Let's bring in Shepard Smith, host of the News with Shepard Smith on CNBC, of course. Shep, it's good to have you back. As we watch these images play out, what can you tell us?
Kelly, it's an extraordinary series of circumstances. You remember that the mayor had asked for the National Guard. The mayor of Washington can't deploy the National Guard. D.C. is not a state. So she requested the National Guard, and they were sent out. They were confident, according to Capitol Hill Police and others, that they had a security cordon that was going to keep people out of the building itself, and that security cordon has failed. A reporter for the Huffington Post online site and others have now posted photographs of protesters who have not only breached that outer cordon around the Capitol building itself, but have gotten inside the Capitol building. Many of them seen in red Make America Great hats. I'm just looking at these pictures, which are waiting to clear for air. And they're wandering just outside the Senate chamber. Further, it's being reported that, though NBC News has not confirmed this to my knowledge, that Vice President Pence has been escorted from the Senate chamber as they wait to continue the day's work. We don't have any reports of anyone being hurt at this moment, but there is certainly chaos on Capitol Hill. At this moment, the Capitol Hill police are reporting that they have it contained, but it would appear that they are there by the thousands from the images that you can see on the screen. And we have visual evidence that some protesters have made it inside the Capitol building, around the security, and are gathering around the area where the Senate was in session just moments ago. It's exactly the sort of thing that Mitch McConnell in his speech was warning supporters of the president not to do. We don't know who these individuals are or what their individual motives are, but I can tell you they're clad in the red caps, and the reports, the anecdotal reports from the ground are that they came over from the speech and wandered toward the Capitol, where we've seen them massing throughout the day, even yesterday, in fairly large numbers. Reporters for our sister network, MSNBC, were reporting earlier today that the crowds at the Capitol were enormous for the speech, and then there were overflow areas outside where they were there by the thousands. Our sister network's reporters interviewing one after another who said, you know, we're here to support the president. We believe that the election has been stolen against all evidence, but they believe that the election has been stolen and they wanted to take back the government. And now it would appear at least some people, whether connected with that bunch or not, is reporting for another moment, but some of them have gotten inside the Capitol building. There is no indication of any kind that any lawmaker's safety is in jeopardy. Every report so far, at least, is that Capitol Hill police and others have the situation under control. But there you can see in a fairly ominous-looking blue tint aerial shot of the Capitol Dome. And it is extraordinary to think of what this day normally is. I think I've been anchoring the news for 4 different cycles of this time when this day came along, and it was but a 15 or 20-second reader that this largely symbolic procedure had taken place, that the Senate had come together and by orders of the Constitution had done this, you know, very sort of routine engagement, which barely made the evening news. Remember, all of this was certified long ago. The states do the certifying. This is just a matter of performance, frankly. And Mike Pence's role here, I heard someone say today, it's very much like that of the one giving out the Grammy Awards. You know, you don't have any control over things. You're just reading things. But there's a great number of people upset with him and the entire process. And over the question is, well, must we not recognize that people are upset? Well, they certainly are upset, but they're upset because of the propaganda which has you know, infected our news media and throughout our social media, suggesting that this is something nefarious has taken place, when the courts have taken up case after case after case by the dozens and have not been presented any evidence of widespread fraud, any evidence of voter interference, any evidence of fraudulence within the ballot process. This was a free and fair election by every measure available to us and used by us historically, except this time the noise has drowned out the signal. So the search for the signal is clear, and the signal is this: the process has been orderly and by the books. Everything that happened in the Senate today was exactly that. And Kayla, now what we're seeing is just a bit of chaos by those who would make chaos around the Capitol. Kayla, what are you hearing?
Well, Shep, to your point about how uncontroversial this day normally is, Senator Claire McCaskill earlier today was asked about her recollections of this day, and she said that it was such a day without fanfare that she didn't even remember where she was on these prior days. Of course, she left the Senate after losing her reelection in 2018, but she said normally they would just send a few representatives from the chamber to go represent and count and witness this normally diurnal part of history that happens without fanfare. As far as those images of those people who are outside the Senate chamber and who have gathered inside the Capitol, I want to explain a little bit about what it means to say that there's been a breach at the Capitol. Not only on a day like today would you have multiple layers of security guards and federal police who are outside the Capitol, but on any given day, to enter the Capitol building, you have to go through multiple entrances of security. That means metal detectors known as mags, and procedures similar to TSA at the airport, where you have your bags or anything on you that is essentially being checked to make sure that anyone entering the premises is a safe individual. Because the Capitol has been breached, that means that these people have gained access to the building without going through those metal detectors, those mags, and having whatever is on their person be scanned. That is one of the reasons why there is a little bit of alarm among at least the reporters and the people who are covering this, who are now on lockdown in both of those chambers and around both of those chambers, because there is little known about whether there is any danger to be presented by these individuals who have breached the Capitol, because they did not go through those very strict protocols that are set in place for this reason. So certainly, Shep, you mentioned that we don't know of any danger being posed to lawmakers or those present at the Capitol building, but because it has been a breach of the Capitol, that means that normal security protocol have not been upheld. So we don't exactly know whether there is any danger at this point.
No, we don't. But these pictures in Statuary Hall are really astounding. It looks almost like a tour that might exist there, and yet these are people who have, in some cases at least I'm told, who've gotten inside the building. There are pictures of people who have scaled the walls. There are pictures all over social media at the moment from people who were either witnesses thereto or participators therein. I don't have any way to know, but pictures of people scaling the walls, and you can see the MAGA hats of people inside. Statuary Hall was closed off for the proceedings today, and the Capitol is now on lockdown. No one is allowed to enter the Capitol, except here are these demonstrators inside, and there they are with what appears to be the "Don't Tread on Us" flag. I want to read a tweet which came from the president. It is clear that the President of the United States is stoking this. That's not a matter of opinion. That is observation and fact. Here's what he said on Twitter a short time ago, quoting now: "Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA, demand the truth." Of course, as is so often the case, that is just not true. Mike Pence does not have the authority under the Constitution and the law to do anything more than he has done today. We researched this thoroughly. His is the role of a moderator. He is one who leads the process. He is a presenter and nothing more in that. He has no authority to undo the will of the people, which is what the president was asking for the Congress to do. It's what he was asking Republicans to do, to undo the will of the people. He portrays this as a fraudulent and inaccurate, the ballots. This has been litigated, and that is not the case. A sad state of affairs when the President of the United States is stoking this sort of anarchy, but that's where we find ourselves this afternoon. Kayla, if there have been more breaches, we don't know about them, but the pictures, the still images of people climbing the walls to get inside the Capitol, there has never been anything like this in the history of the country. This sort of matter has taken place since the beginning of the country's inception, and there was one time when there was one objection when things went off the rails for a moment, but were quickly put. We've never had anything like this, Kayla.
Well, and it's also worth noting, Shep, that there are usually very few instances where you have both chambers gathered in their entirety for events that are this large of a scale. You have the State of the Union and the annual address to Congress that the president gives at the beginning of the year in the advent of an administration. And then you have a day like today where there's the counting of these votes. But there has been such an outsized focus on what is going to be happening today at the Capitol, and reporting from a wide variety of outlets and networks about the possibility of threats because of the sensitive nature of what's going on there today. And certainly the president and his tweet going after Mike Pence and saying that he did not have the courage to do what needed to be done today, he is further inciting a crowd who earlier today he told, "We will never concede," a reference to the fact that the expectation was that today's proceedings would guarantee the election victory of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and their incoming administration. The Pence camp had said that he was going to take a studious and a diligent approach, that he would remain, as he has, unfailingly loyal to President Trump. But outside advisors to the vice president note that he was in a no-win situation in this situation because he might have future political ambitions of his own. He believes that he has done a lot over the last 4 or 5 years to curry favor not only with the president but also with his base. He has been exceedingly on message for the president during this time, only for at the very end of the administration to have this event essentially have the president turn against him. Kristen Welker at NBC News is reporting from a former White House official that there is some urging privately behind the scenes for the president to come out and tell protesters publicly to stand down, saying that he is the only one who can sway this crowd against the demonstrations that are currently going on. We are awaiting a formal word from the White House on its read on the events on Capitol Hill today. But certainly the break between the vice president and the president after 5 years of being incredibly close, both in action and in message, and after their lunch and their meetings together over the last several days, it's certainly notable, Shep.
It certainly is. The House is now in recess. Capitol Hill police have notified members of the Congress to essentially shelter in place. Muriel Bowser, one more thing. Vice President Pence has now been moved to a secure location, which is a statement that just hearing gives you pause, as well as Grassley. Senator Grassley has also been moved to a secure location, and there they are, like invaders on the Capitol, the place where you come as a high school senior to take a photograph, the place beneath which you stand to look up at the marvels of this nation of, by, and for the people, where one of the bellwethers of our democracy is the peaceful transition of power. I remember like it was yesterday when Barack Obama was put into office, and marveling at, after all of the rancor and all the vitriol, standing in front of the White House as the president was sworn into office, and Republicans and Democrats all respecting the process. And remember discussing on air that day that it is one of the beauties, the shining lights of our nation for the world, that this is who we are. And this is how it's done. Fledgling democracies, gathering steam around the planet. Look at this. This is your signal in the noise. This is how democracies act. After all is said and done, there is a peaceful transfer of power. And just 12 minutes ago, Representative Adam Kinzinger tweeted, "This is a coup attempt." Mayor Muriel Bowser has now instituted a curfew in Washington. Washington is under curfew from 6 p.m. tonight till 6 o'clock in the morning. The Capitol Hill police have ordered, and those inside the Capitol are urging all of those around the Capitol to stand down. And yet, on the move they are. up the steps of the United States Capitol, breaching the security line, and into the halls of power. Adam Kinzinger, this is a coup attempt. You wake up each morning, Kayla, and know that the news can bring anything. We knew that this would be a difficult day. Last night, with the Democrats picking up one seat in Georgia, leading in a second seat, still too close to call, according to the reporting of NBC News, but reaching a point at some time this afternoon where we'll have a decision there. The Senate, breaking now and just into CNBC, the Senate is now being evacuated. Vice President Pence has been taken to a secure location, Senator Grassley to a secure location, and the crowds continue to build around the Capitol. Kayla, you wake up not knowing what the day will bring, but this really did not enter your mind. You knew that there could be confrontations, as we've seen that before. We knew that the president would antagonize and egg it on because we've read it and watched it each day, but had no idea that it would come to the point where demonstrators would breach the Capitol. This is extraordinary and historic.
And the president had been expected to deliver today's speech, to hold today's rally as a swan song of sorts just 2 weeks before leaving office. Of course, the timing was not coincidental that it would happen on the day where these votes were going to be counted and certified inside the halls of Congress. But some of the language is now going back and being combed through with a fine-tooth comb. Yes, Shep.
Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting, but we've just gotten a new tweet from the president, and this one is worth repeating. From the president, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Again, from the president, please support our Capitol Hill and law enforcement, Capitol Hill Police and law enforcement. They are on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. And it is noteworthy and will be a matter of historical record that 14 minutes prior to that tweet, as the protesters were breaching the security line, as they are now, and entering the closed-off Capitol, he tweeted, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving the states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent and inaccurate ones which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth. Back-to-back those claims, and by the way, the one I just read is flagged by Twitter. This claim about election fraud is disputed, Kayla.
Yeah, and perhaps some notable nuance right there, Shep, that the president is saying to support Capitol Police and law enforcement, even as he is trying to cast a pall over his own Vice President Mike Pence. And earlier today in that speech, he was taking direct aim and vowing vengeance on Republicans like Liz Cheney, the number 3 Republican in the House, saying we got to get rid of her because Cheney was one of many Republicans on the House side who was denouncing the efforts by Republicans to object to these results. So certainly he is saying that you should be deferential to law enforcement, but also not really throwing his support behind the Republicans who have been trying to go through the order of business of counting these votes, which is why we are here today and why we are covering the Capitol in such close fashion, and why eyes all around the world are on the Capitol. Of course, if you're the Biden-Harris administration, the VP-elect Kamala Harris is on the Capitol grounds today. A transition official tells NBC News that she is safe, although we do not know exactly what her location is at this moment. The Biden team, President-elect Biden, was expected to be making a speech at 2:30. That is right now, where he was expected to talk about small business, the need to essentially have a rising tide in the economy lift all boats. He was expected to echo calls from earlier this week of supporting $2,000 stimulus checks, which Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer just this morning announced his continued support for. And he was going to be addressing the results overnight in Georgia. NBC News saying that the race between Jon Ossoff and David Perdue is still too close to call, but it is one where Ossoff is leading, and the president-elect was expected to take a sort of victory lap. But certainly you have to expect there's going to be a recalibration of messaging emerging behind the scenes as the Biden-Harris transition takes stock of what's happening on Capitol Hill, what's happening inside the Capitol building, and whether there needs to be any broader statement about democracy that needs to be made today as well. Shep.
Kayla, indeed, new information now. CNBC can now confirm that as the Senate was being evacuated, senators were taken through the tunnels beneath the Capitol, which are used for transportation and otherwise. Senators often make their way around the Capitol in that way. They were doing so with gas masks in hand as a precaution. I mentioned that Vice President Pence has now been escorted from the Capitol, and he is safe, we're told. I mentioned lawmakers were told to wear gas masks, and new information in now that this is more than Washington, D.C. Fresh from the Washington Post, whose reporters are now telegraphing that at the Georgia State Capitol, militia members have emerged, and the Georgia State Capitol, help me in the booth, the Georgia State Capitol has been, the Secretary of State has been escorted out of the Georgia Capitol for safety. Militia members there. So this is happening in more than one place, none more prevalent or making a larger statement, of course, than here in Washington. At last, the president is on board urging calm, but that has not been his mantra for quite some time. It is easy to remember the president telling the Proud Boys to stand by, to stand up, and there it is. The American flag and others. This was an area on which people could not travel today. This was locked down for security reasons. Much of Washington had been locked down for concerns about violence. It was clear from our reporting yesterday and the day before that intelligence officials and Capitol Hill police and others had been monitoring the scene and had been monitoring social media and the internet, and had come to the conclusion that these organizations, if you will, or these groups had decided to convene here today and looked to be up to no good, which is exactly why the mayor, Muriel Bowser, asked for the National Guard to be deployed to help secure the city. Now we know a curfew as of 6 p.m., and you wonder where this goes from here. It's 2:45 on the East Coast, 11:45 on the West Coast. I'm Shepard Smith in New York, and this is CNBC's continuing coverage of what appears to be a siege on Capitol Hill. Representative Adam Kinzinger calling it an attempted coup. General Barry McCaffrey with us now, four-star general, NBC News contributor, familiar across our NBC News and CNBC platforms. General McCaffrey, thank you. Without further, your observations on this sad day.
Well, something that I would never have assumed had ever happened in America. This is clearly an attempted auto coup by the defeated President of the United States, Trump, that he has called in his supporters who are now in criminal possession of the Capitol building of the Congress of the United States. And therefore, they have been, we should not ignore, prevented from carrying out their constitutional duty. At face value, I mean, you don't need to go to constitutional lawyers to understand that obviously the Vice President of the United States can't unilaterally choose the next president. So it was nonsense from the start, but it shows the power of Trump's message to these people who are now clearly in violation of the law. Very dangerous situation. A second observation, it is shameful, the lack of security of the Capitol building. I remember the great riots I was a young officer at Walter Reed Army Hospital during the Vietnam War.
Excuse me, General. Forgive me for the interruption, but our Eamon Javers is now reporting, and I'm quoting, there are gunshots inside the Capitol. That's from the reporting of CNBC's Eamon Javers. Eamon, are you with us?
Yeah, Shep, I'm there. What we don't have confirmed is whether shots have been fired. What we are seeing is pictures now from people in the House chamber of officers with guns drawn and pointed at the door of the House, and some very respected reporters from longtime Washington reporters who've covered the House for a long time are reporting that there's an attempt now to breach the House floor itself, the doors of the House, to get onto the floor inside the chamber there. And Capitol Police are obviously standing by their ground. We're monitoring this to see if we can get pictures of exactly what's happening at the doors to the House of Representatives, but it does appear that there is a confrontation now between law enforcement, security forces, and these protesters who have breached the Capitol building and have made their way to the House floor. So we're going to look for more detail on that before we can say exactly what's going on there. But on the other side of the Capitol, Shep, as you've been talking about, the Senate likes to think of itself as the greatest deliberative body in the world, but the Senate is not deliberating right now. The senators have been evacuated. According to a member of the United States Senate, they've been removed to a secure location. The process, the constitutional process that we've been walking through today has now been stopped by these protesters who have laid siege to the Capitol building. This is something we simply have never seen before in U.S. history. It's a sad moment, and as you were pointing out a short time ago, Shep, these images are going to be beamed around the world of the state of American democracy today. And we did see that tweet from the president urging protesters to be peaceful here. The president said earlier today that he was going to be joining these protesters on Capitol Hill. He talked to the protesters down on the Ellipse, which is near the White House on the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue, and told them that they were going to be walking to the Capitol building to protest what has been going on here in terms of the count of the Electoral College votes. The president told them he would be joining them there. That was a surprise to White House staffers who had not heard that, according to pool reporters, that the president would be going to the Capitol himself. It's now not clear where the president is going to go with this, but he said he was going to be joining this group up on Capitol Hill, Shep.
Amen. Amen. I want to show our viewers a new image that we have cleared now. This is from a Huffington Post reporter who is there at the spot where you were describing. This is, I'm told, a picture of what is being described by the Reuters news agency, Huffington Post, and others as an armed standoff at the door of the House chamber. Guns drawn, I am told. Just as I was told by producers, Reuters is now reporting that people are banging on the door and trying to get inside. Just prior to my handing over to you, producers told me that it was your reporting that shots had been fired. It is and apparently that is not your reporting, and for uttering that, I'm deeply, deeply sorry. It was reported to me, and I reported it as is protocol. But at this moment, we do have confirmed that there was tear gas fired and that members of the legislature were informed that they should don their gas masks. So what I don't know is whether security forces of some kind, be they Capitol Hill Police or National Guard or whomever fired it, or whether protesters or anarchists of some kind fired it, but it is confirmed now that there's tear gas there. What do you know of that?
Well, Shep, we don't have reports yet on exactly what is being used here to diffuse the situation, but what the picture you were just looking at was a picture of the House floor where security forces are now, Capitol Police are now trying to prevent protesters from getting onto the House floor. You saw the blue carpeted aisle there. That picture is being shot from the press gallery looking down on the House floor. You can see the spectator gallery above. The door there is empty, and those two windows there in the door that's being barricaded by those officers in that picture. You can see the man in the blue shirt. They've set up some kind of barricade in the aisle on the House floor to prevent people from coming on the floor. On the other side of that door is Statuary Hall, which is where we've seen video of a number of protesters having breached that area already today. So presumably some of those protesters from Statuary Hall have decided they want to make their way onto the floor, and Capitol Police are blocking that and protecting the floor of the House of Representatives from being stormed by pro-Trump forces trying to stop this election. It's a moment in American history. Just have never seen anything like this, and it's stunning to be standing here and reporting this with you, Shep. But you would imagine now it would be incumbent upon the White House to say something to these people who are doing this. This is a pro-Trump group that will presumably follow the directions of the president if he issues them. He has issued the tweet, but this is a moment that calls for real national leadership, and we're just going to have to wait and see how all the leaders decide they want to handle it, Shep.
Two new bits of information now, Amen. Democratic Representative Slotkin has now reported to NBC News that the shots fired report was what she described as flash bangs outside her office on Capitol Hill. We don't know the source of those flash bangs, but she was noticeably shaken thereby. Further, NBC News' Garrett Hake is reporting that the National Guard's presence has been requested to clear the halls of the Capitol of these demonstrators as they continue to climb the steps in the front and overtake the halls of power. I believe it's Elon Moy who has details about how people are being evacuated there around the Capitol as this situation plays out. Elon?
Well, what we do know is that our colleagues over at NBC News who are inside the building say that it is just chaos around the House chamber, that there has been glass that's been broken, the doors have been barricaded, and that some members have been evacuated and that some who are in place are now praying. Now, the official work of both the House and the Senate does occur inside the chamber, but underneath that and the floors below is just a labyrinth of offices, of the cafeteria, of storage closets. That is where the sausage making of legislating and the mundane work of governing actually occurs. And there are many routes that you can take to get from the chamber down below to the basement. And many of these buildings are connected. It is not just the single Capitol dome that is part of the Capitol complex. There are many office buildings to either side of that are connected by tunnels, that are connected by the Capitol's own subway system that lawmakers can use in order to try to get away perhaps from some of these protests. We do not know the exact route that lawmakers may be taking, but certainly these are narrow hallways and they will be very crowded as our reporters over at NBC are saying that as many as hundreds of people, 100 people may have been in the House chamber when the Capitol went on lockdown. So it is a maze just of offices and of different buildings. And there are multiple avenues out, fortunately, and we will see which ones end up being the safest so that lawmakers can get to safety. You know, Shep, you mentioned that the president tweeted finally saying that it is time to stand by the Capitol Police. That tweet came 45 minutes after House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy had tweeted that the protesters should heed the Capitol Police and should remain peaceful as well. So that tweet was a long time in coming, and we're already hearing from other leaders of the Republican Party who had tried to tell these protesters to remain peaceful and to not take a more violent path that now it seems to be coming down to, Shep.
Some new information, Elon, just coming in from my editorial team of the Evening News. There is video now of demonstrators inside the chamber, one screaming Trump won the election, and further, new reporting now that law enforcement have geared up into their full tactical gear and are heading into the U.S. Capitol. Again, this is according to our researcher, Stephen Joachim, who's confirmed this. Guns drawn inside the Capitol, the security cordon around it breached, a curfew now in place at the Capitol on what would normally be, you know, a day of peaceful transition. As a veil lifter and a behind the scenes for you, this morning in our editorial meetings, there was the feeling the nation has turned the page. The nation, through the decisions in Georgia, definitely one yet to be determined, but certainly leaning toward a change in hands of government in Washington. that the nation has turned the page, and today's focus would be, what does all of this mean? With potentially new chairmen of the committees on the Hill, a new narrative, the Biden plan for infrastructure and jobs and infrastructure, and a flow of money. The market's reacting early, up more than 600 points at one point, and as you can see at the bottom of your screen, up some 430 now. A great deal of optimism, at least, no matter what your political persuasion. The market's certainly reacting in a positive way, up across all sectors, with transportation sectors, with construction and infrastructure sectors leading the way, up 4 or 5%. That the change had been made, that the people had spoken, and now we would begin to report on the future and leave this tumultuous past behind us. And yet, this crescendo today, with the president sending out a tweet a short time ago to please pay attention to the law enforcement after egging this on for oh so long. Now you can see the demonstrations are still going on. According to the Reuters news agency, as I just said moments ago, the protesters are now inside the Senate chamber. Remember, the Senate was evacuated. All members of the Senate were evacuated. Senate members were, in the very end of that evacuation, told to have gas masks with them in the event that tear gas or something else might end up in the air, so that there wouldn't be discomfort. They were secure and taken away and through the tunnels of the quarters of the Capitol and off to secure locations, as the vice president was. But now these demonstrators are inside the Senate chambers. If Barry McCaffrey is still with us, I apologize for the interruption, but I had to get to Eamon Javers. General McCaffrey, you were saying that it was unconscionable that they were not prepared. It was Muriel Bowser, the mayor, who had requested the National Guard, and now it is the reporting of CNBC that the request has been made for the National Guard to come in and clear the halls, which would be an astounding thing to see. There's been so much concern expressed by 10 former national security chairmen, 10 living national security chairmen, that the president might in some way invoke the military against the people. That was from their statement, that now it would be required that the National Guard would have to clear the people from the people's halls, is just extraordinary, General.
Yeah, well, look, the District of Columbia has a very unusual legal status when it comes to both the National Guard and federal police. Federal government obviously has, at the end of the day, summary authority over the District of Columbia. And within the city, there are carve-out zones, the White House, the Capitol, and other federal buildings, where essentially it's not D.C. police, it's a federal security force, in this case, the Capitol Hill police, that are responsible. So the mayor really doesn't have the authority to send her National Guard into the Capitol building. This would be a federal responsibility. And, I think it's the most shocking failure of security imaginable to place the Congress of the United States at physical risk in an occupied congressional chamber because they weren't prepared to deal with it. This is now going to end up legitimately at some point.
How long it might take for the Capitol to be cleared, for order to be restored, and for democracy to take its march toward a transfer of power is an unknown matter. One thing I don't have information on is where the president is. We presume he's in the White House, and whether the president might make any statement on all of this. He's sent out a tweet, obviously, but has not come to the floor. NBC News reporting the Senate is evacuated. Vice President Pence ushered to a secure location after those pro-Trump demonstrators stormed the Capitol and, for lack of a better term, are now occupying it as we wait for it to be cleared. From NBC News, the U.S. Capitol descended into chaos on Wednesday as hundreds of pro-Trump protesters swarmed the building, forcing the Senate to evacuate Vice President Mike Pence to be ushered to a secure location. The frenzied scene after demonstrators broke through barricades forced Congress to evacuate parts of the building, and abruptly pause a ceremonial event affirming that President-elect Joe Biden did indeed win the November election. Vice President Pence was presiding over the joint session at the time. He was seen rushing out of the Senate chamber amid the sounds of protesters who surrounded the Capitol. Vice President Pence and Senator Chuck Grassley, the Republican of Iowa, the president pro tem, were taken to a secure location, according to a senator to NBC News. The doors of the Senate were closed and locked, and senators were told to stay away from those doors. The chaotic situation came after President Trump, who has refused to accept the results of the election and today said he would never surrender, spoke to a large crowd in front of the White House. He angrily vowed that he would never concede to President-elect Biden and baselessly asserted that the election results were fraudulent. Quoting the president, "We will never give up. We will never concede. You don't concede when there's theft involved." That from President Trump to the crowd of supporters, some of whom chanted USA and waved anti-Biden banners. The president later falsely claimed that the president-elect would be an illegitimate president. The U.S. Capitol Police said it was evacuating areas near the building as pro-Trump protesters stormed barricades set up outside the perimeter, and law enforcement was seen trying to push them back. In other images, we saw demonstrators scaling the walls to enter inside the chamber. Remember, the House was not available for public today. Everything was closed in Washington in anticipation of possible demonstrations. The Library of Congress, directly across the street from the main Capitol building, was also evacuated. People told to remain calm and move in a safe manner to the exits. And then the president tweeted, "Please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful." Eamon Javers is with us now. Eamon, it began with large crowds, but now, and then escalated to this assault on the Capitol, and now, Eamon, we have new video.
Yeah, that's right, Shep. These pro-Trump loyalists have stormed the Senate floor now, and Frank Thorpe, who is the NBC News Capitol Hill reporter, has just tweeted out this video, which you can see now, of protesters on the floor milling about. At least one of those protesters wearing a Trump flag as a cape. You can see another one appears to be unloading a suitcase or a duffel bag of some sort. And the protesters, at the point that video was taken, he just tweeted that out a few moments ago, appear to have total and unrestricted control of the Senate floor. I don't see any Capitol Police presence there at all on the U.S. Senate floor as we watch those protesters sort of milling about without really seeming to have any sense of what they're going to do once they got there. But the concern among many here, in addition to the symbolism, is going to be who got onto the Senate floor, what did they bring with them. This is a very controlled security environment where everybody who comes in has to go through metal detectors, have their bags checked and everything else. All of these bags now have been brought into the Capitol complex. It's not clear by whom, with what intent, what was brought into the Capitol, where all those people are right now. This is an enormous security nightmare of epic proportions for the Capitol Police now to deal with all of these people roaming the Capitol, angry, shouting. We've seen video of them fighting with the Capitol Police inside the Capitol building, and now we don't know exactly what they're carrying or what their intent is, Shep. So it's a very scary moment on the Senate floor as you see those protesters have total control over one of the most hallowed chambers in American democracy.
Eamon, an update now on the person who was seen bloodied and being removed from the Capitol. NBC's Josh Letterman is now reporting that it was a female, a woman who was being taken from the Capitol with very bloodied and clearly injured, somewhat severely, according to the reporting of Josh Letterman. Let's listen to Ellison Barber now. NBC News' Ellison Barber on scene. Listen.
We made it to Nancy's office. When I asked him to stop and talk to us, he also declined on that. But there's kind of been, if those people were in fact inside, a celebratory mood here for them as they make their way out. You can see up on the steps here where people are still gathered. Off to the left side of the steps, Capitol Police have kind of congregated in a group there, and they've been there for the last little bit, kind of just standing by to the side of these protesters. We have seen a couple snipers or what appear to be snipers on the roof of the U.S. Capitol. Other than that, though, the situation on this side has remained somewhat calm. It's not really the right word for this, but as you said, we have not seen any acts of violence per se right in front of us, but we have seen a forceful crowd as they made their way up to the front and initially passed through those bicycle barricades. They are still here, and as some people come out and claim to have been inside the U.S. Capitol, those people are then being greeted amongst this crowd as heroes of sorts, being cheered for going inside. One person who had come out, they had some sort of liquid water type thing on them. They said that they had been sprayed. But again, none of those people were willing to speak with us on camera. You can hear the crowd right now cheering some as they have flags, many of them Trump flags. A Don't Tread on Me flag held on both sides now have been have been hoisted up kind of on the sides there. So this crowd has stayed here where they are. Capitol Police on the side, not seeming to necessarily engage with the crowd here. But as I said, we haven't seen any sort of violent acts from the crowd here, but people who are claiming to have been inside are being celebrated as they make their way out. Lester?
Is Ellison Barber live on scene, who was delivering a report for the NBC broadcast network, which has cut into local programming in many parts of the country, with a special report with Lester Holt. As the United States Capitol is under siege, the Senate chambers and the House chambers were occupied by demonstrators, and I have two bits of new information and important ones. President-elect Biden is scheduled to speak about 8 minutes from now with a message on all of this. CNBC will have live coverage of that. In addition, I mentioned earlier, the mayor of Washington, Muriel Bowser, does not have the authority, because she is not a governor. Washington, D.C. is not a state. She does not have, per se, control to activate the National Guard. She requested that the National Guard clear the halls of the Capitol. That request made of the Justice Department, and now, according to the reporting of the Washington Post, the Justice Department has denied that request. We have no indications that the president is planning to speak, but we do know that the president-elect will speak shortly. Now, 13 minutes past 3 o'clock in Washington. Kayla Tausche watching along with us. Kayla, do you have a sense whether people are leaving the interior of the Capitol, whether there are forces available to facilitate such a thing, or whether this is just playing out in a sort of unsupervised way after the security cordon was breached?
Well, it seems like it's the latter, just from the dispatches that are being sent across social media by reporters and others who are present at the Capitol at this hour. Remember, Shep, this was a day that was going to be dictated by disinfecting and social distancing, where a normal course of electoral authority was going to be run in a slightly longer time frame because of some of these COVID protocols, because of the global pandemic. But yet, because of the scene unfolding on Capitol Hill, people are huddled in masses, in groups, reporters crowding into the various, what they call the press gallery, where reporters have computers, printers, access to technology, and where they normally have workspace to file their articles and their TV dispatches. It seems that for the time being, there is still a lockdown, that people don't feel comfortable to move about within the building, just based on what we're seeing from our colleagues who are there. And then there are lawmakers who are filing some intermittent dispatches through their own social media feeds. Of course, we had Jim Himes of Connecticut, who was talking about his belief that tear gas was being used in some parts of the Capitol. And then we just got a tweet from Marco Rubio, who is the senator from Florida, who had not communicated the direction that he was going to go on the election results today. His colleague, Senator Rick Scott, had planned to object to the electoral results from Pennsylvania. But Marco Rubio tweeting just a few minutes ago, there is nothing patriotic about what is occurring on Capitol Hill. This is third world style, anti-American, anarchy. We are still awaiting any potential remarks from the sitting president. There are reports about him potentially viewing what's going on TV. We have reached out to the White House for confirmation about the president's whereabouts and whether he plans to make any sort of address. And then there is the president-elect as well, who is expected to give a speech around 2:30 p.m. And you can imagine that he is taking stock of everything that is going on and crafting his message. The message today was expected to be about the economy, but there is clearly so much more at stake than that right now, Shep.
Okay. Washington, D.C. police are now reporting that they are treating several people for injuries. And according to Washington, D.C. police and the reporting of NBC's Tom Winter, there is an unconfirmed report that one person has been shot at the Capitol. Again, that's from quoting the Washington, D.C. EMS, an unconfirmed report of one person shot and multiple people being treated for injuries. We have no indication that the president is going to speak, but we do have a new tweet for him, quoting now from President Trump. I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence, exclamation point. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you, says President Trump. It's just extraordinary that we're in this situation. It's my understanding that the Justice Department has denied the request for the National Guard to come out. We know that the curfew begins in 2 hours and 45 minutes, and you wonder, Eamon Javers, or actually Ilan Moy, you wonder how it would be possible to enforce a curfew without a police presence larger than that of the Capitol Police, without some help from some law enforcement agency. This is not a crowd that appears in any mood to disperse at the moment.
Well, that's right, Shep. I mean, the crowd has already gotten past the security perimeter. It's already been facing off against Capitol Hill police. So that 6 p.m. curfew will be a difficult one to enforce, and we'll see how many people are still out after that. But we do now have some word on the whereabouts and security of lawmakers in both the House and the Senate. NBC reporting that senators are in a secure location but are unclear how long they'll have to remain there, but that they are safe. NBC also reporting that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is safe as well, but it's not clear exactly where she is. However, many lawmakers, as well as some press, also have been evacuated from the House chamber to the Longworth office building. Now, that is just across the street from the Capitol building itself. They are in the Ways and Means Committee room. Now, that has been set up as a sort of alternate House chamber. If you have ever been inside the Ways and Means Committee room, and if you've listened to any tax hearings, you'll know which one I'm talking about, because it is one of the largest chambers and one of the largest committee rooms inside the Capitol complex and inside the House. And it was set up partly as this alternate chamber because of its size. That room, however, is also extremely cold. And this is important because one of the reasons that it is so cold, at least reporters have been told, is because that was set up so that in the case of a gas attack, the molecules in the air might move more slowly and lawmakers might be more safe. So that room has served a special purpose. And now we see that lawmakers are being evacuated there, including Abigail Spanberger, Val Deming, Sheila Jackson Lee. All of them appear to be in the Longworth House office building inside the Ways and Means Committee room for now. We will see if they will be able to actually leave the Capitol complex and what other rooms they might be evacuated to. Shep?
Ilan, there's new reporting now from NBC News that there's a joint operation underway between Capitol Hill Police and D.C. Metro Police, and the process has begun to clear the House chamber, that they will then move to the Senate chamber and clear the Senate chamber, and some indications that a process to clear the outside of this building, which you see on your left and alternately on the right now, of clearing the outside of the Capitol. Still no National Guard, as mentioned before, but those two agencies, D.C. Metro Police and Capitol Hill Police, working jointly to clear. As reported on NBC News, there is a process underway to bring police vans in and haul away any of those who are uncooperative or have broken laws. So It's not as if, as we were saying earlier, this is happening without, quote, supervision. There is a process in place now to clear those who've breached the security lines. Is General McCaffrey still with us? It's also interesting to note, and in a microcosm, the markets have been living in a different world than the people. The markets have been soaring during all of this. The markets reacting extraordinarily favorably to the idea of a vast infrastructure program with a flow of Washington money to begin what has been described as infrastructure year, and a lot of hiring and a lot of spending. And the Dow soared today more than 600 points, with infrastructure stocks leading the charge. And even as the Capitol is under siege, as the House and Senate chambers are occupied, as a bloodied woman is carried from the Capitol and multiple people are being treated by fire rescue, the Dow, the market is up 368 points. The S&P 500 up 32 at this moment. Only the tech-heavy NASDAQ in the red. It's just another show of how the markets and the real life are not in sync and have not been in sync. It was said this morning, Bob Pisani said this morning, the markets love the idea of infrastructure, of money flowing, of turning the page, of some degree of certainty about where the country is headed and what the plan is for the future, how we'll tackle the vaccine and the distribution thereof, and getting the economy back open, getting people back into their jobs, kids back into their schools, life back into our restaurants and retail outlets. And the market loves all of that, and as is almost always the case, ignores the starkest realities that overtake our lives. The capital is under siege and the market is soaring. It is astounding to watch. The bottom right of your screen on CNBC and the center of your screen simultaneously. And the lower third there, the House, Senate evacuated as the U.S. Capitol has been breached. Elan, Eamon, I know now from NBC News reporting that there's this joint operation between Metro Police and Capitol Police, that they have begun the process, if not completed it, of clearing the House chamber and are moving to the Senate chamber, and then alternately will go to the outside to clear it. Do we have an idea about whether they'll have any help? Because though those are formidable forces, they're not that large in number.
Yeah, that's right, Shep. I mean, the Capitol Police is, thousands of police officers. It is a large police force, but it has clearly been overwhelmed here in the Capitol building as we watch these Trump loyalists storm the Capitol building, invade the House floor, invade the Senate floor, and the Capitol Police now seem
on the grounds of the United States Capitol. This is likely what you're hearing inside, and this is the reason you said that you were told to shelter in place, moved to an undisclosed location. How much of this can you hear and even see, or at least could you, when you were still on the House floor?
Well, when we left the House floor, we were taken out through a door where they had tactical teams keeping protesters on their bellies, literally outside the House doors. So people had gotten to the doors of the chamber. Windows had been broken. And as I said, when we left, there were officers with their guns drawn and pointed at the doors, obviously indicating that they thought there was a threat about to come through. Anyway, my colleagues and I right now are a little shell-shocked. You might imagine emotions are running pretty high right now. This is something that didn't need to happen. And it's something that shouldn't have happened. There's a lot to take stock of here in terms of how we got to this place, what President Trump said and did to set this off, and quite frankly, how the Capitol could be so vulnerable. I've been working in this building for a while now, and I've always assumed that when things got ugly, they could push a button and doors would be sealed and everything would be fine. That obviously turns out not to be the case. It doesn't feel like we're through it yet, but we've got a lot to learn from what happened today.
Well, stay safe. Let us know if you see and hear anything more, and we appreciate you giving us an update. Jake?
Congressman Himes, Congressman Gallagher, Congressman Kinzinger, thank you so much for your time. Stay safe for you and your staffs. I want to bring in Pamela Brown right now because, Pamela, we're only seeing some of the violence on the outside of the Capitol building. You have more information about what's going on inside in this armed insurrection, in this attempted coup by President Trump and his supporters. Tell us more.
Well, to tell you just how out of control this has gotten, Jake, a woman is now in critical condition after being shot in the chest on the Capitol grounds. This is according to two sources familiar with the matter. The sources couldn't provide any further details on the circumstances of the shooting, but sources I've spoken to and to my colleague Noah Gray are telling us that there were shots fired there on the Capitol grounds, and they additionally add that a woman is now in critical condition after being shot in the chest on Capitol grounds. Again, we don't know the circumstances surrounding that, but that just tells you right there how much this has escalated, how quickly it's escalated, and how out of control this has gotten. I'm told from a local source on the ground, a law enforcement source, that police from surrounding areas, from Montgomery County, Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland, Virginia State Police, have all been called in by MPD to help them with these overwhelming crowds, the chaos and the anarchy that's taking place right now.
Horrible, horrible news. Blood now spilled. We don't know any more details about it. But again, this is violence that has been inspired by President Trump, by President Trump's supporters, by Senator Cruz, by Senator Hawley, by the more than 100 members of the House who were objecting to the constitutional responsibilities, the fact that Joe Biden was elected. It is an absolutely disgraceful moment in American history, and there are specific villains who are responsible for it. I want to go to Manu Raju right now. Manu, tell us more about what you're seeing on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, well, possible good news on the Senate side of the Capitol. Our colleague Ted Barrett has been told by police officers on the Senate side that it has been cleared of rioters, of protesters, of demonstrators. The Senate floor, there's debris on the Senate floor because that was breached by protesters, but there's no more protesters, demonstrators, rioters. They're not in the Senate floor. They're not on the Senate wing of the Capitol. These demonstrators have been pushed into the Capitol Rotunda area. Now, that rotunda is the dome of the Capitol that is in between the House and the Senate. There are many protesters that are there. At the moment, the police are escorting out these rioters outside of the Capitol. They've been on the east and west front steps of the Capitol. They're being escorted out one by one from that side. Now, it's uncertain what's happening on the House side of the Capitol. What we do know is that the House members have been evacuated. They've been told to go into their offices. They're not leaving their offices. That's similar on the Senate side. But we do know that there was that armed standoff that occurred on the House floor. Don't know what the latest is on that situation because everybody has been told to clear from that area, including the pool reporters who were in the gallery that witnessed that armed standoff. Uncertain what's going on with that. But there are still many rioters, demonstrators who have breached the security perimeters, have come into the building. They are now cleared from the Senate side of the Capitol. They are in the Capitol Rotunda, and the police are trying to get them out one by one as the situation unfolds. Uncertain again what's happening in the House, as we saw that video of individuals breaking a window, entering the building. That appeared to be on the House side of the Capitol. So there are many of these rioters still in the building, but at the moment, the members are staying away from this. They're locked down, and the Senate side appears clear at the moment.
It is an embarrassing, dangerous, frightening spectacle that we are witnessing. Let's go to Alex Marquardt, who's also on Capitol Hill. Alex, we hope that you are staying safe out there. What are you seeing?
Jake, we are seeing a number of local police officers from Montgomery County, Maryland, who have arrived in the past 20 minutes en masse. It feels like the cavalry has arrived. More than a dozen vehicles with all sorts of officers piling out of those vehicles and suiting up in riot gear, a number of them putting on their gas masks. Obviously, that would assume that some tear gas will get fired at some point. But in terms of the protesters, and in fact, we should call them rioters because that's exactly what they are, not many have moved. We can still see them outside the Capitol building after storming through those police barricades. It's a very aggressive crowd, a very violent crowd. And I have to say, Jake, they figured out who our team was, and they swarmed us and mobbed us and pushed us out of there, calling us traitors, which is just a stunning thing to have happen in your own country from your fellow citizens. So it is a very unfortunate scene, a very dark scene, but there is a feeling right now that finally there is a law enforcement response and that they are about to take control of the situation.
All right. Well, stay safe, Alex. This is, of course, one of the final days of the Trump presidency, and this is a moment of Trump's legacy. This is Trump's legacy. Divided people, millions of Americans who have been fed lies about the election, millions of Americans who have been told that journalists and those who would defy Trump are traitors, and they are expressing their frustrations and their anger with violence, and they are not being discouraged to do so by President Trump. In fact, the lies have been amplified. The lies have been given credence by the likes of Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Josh Hawley, the leader of the House Republicans, Kevin McCarthy, giving these deranged conspiracy theories credibility by acting as though there's something there. There isn't. Judge after judge, governor after governor, Democrats, Republicans, independents have all looked at it and said, there is nothing there. The election was clean, or as clean as elections go in this country. And Joe Biden is the president-elect. Abby, I have to say, it makes perfect sense that the Trump presidency would end this way, but it is no less shocking and saddening to witness.
It's a real tragedy, I think, for this country that this is what we're seeing now. And it's the result of a president who has instigated this from the very beginning, when months ago he refused to say that he would support a peaceful transfer of power. This is the moment that would come into play, where he can say, I lost the election, Joe Biden will be the next president, evacuate the Capitol right now. He won't say it. But what's also really notable about watching this scene, a few months ago in Washington, where we live and where we work, you couldn't drive down the street without being stopped by National Guard vehicles, by law enforcement of every type and every stripe. The Bureau of Prisons was here in Washington. Every block of this city was in lockdown because of Black Lives Matter protesters. Now you have thousands of armed protesters who happen to all be Trump supporters, who are mostly not Black Lives Matter protesters. They're mostly white. And they're storming the Capitol with violence. Someone has been shot. Glass is being broken. Lawmakers are in lockdown wearing gas masks. And it's looking at these pictures, where's law enforcement? Capitol Police struggling to control this, and you don't hear the president saying, we are sending reinforcement. You don't see him saying, we are sending help to protect this federal building, to protect the lawmakers who are inside of it and the people who work there and the people of the city. That is incredibly shameful.
No, you're exactly right. And, you know, what we're looking at, you see the scaffolding there. Well, first of all, look at this. It's getting violent outside. But
I think these are images from earlier.
Or images from earlier, but part of the reason why we saw scaffolding on the west front of the Capitol is because that's where the inauguration for Joe Biden is going to happen on January 20th. And it was 4 years ago, almost to the day, January 20th, 2017, that Donald Trump stood in that spot after he took the oath of office and talked about American carnage. And it's come full circle. After all of the drum beating, after all of the you know, unbelievable tweeting and inciting of violence that he has done, both at rallies and on social media, he got what he wanted. And now they're trying to put the genie back in the bottle. They're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Pick your analogy, and you can't do it. You can't do it. And I'm not sure, I know, Jake, I'm guessing you're going to say you're not sure that the president even wants to do that. But we do know that the people around him are wanting to do that. They want to stop this from happening.
What I want to ask is, because I saw conservative commentator Jonah Goldberg, who is a critic of President Trump.
Yeah.
Because he's somebody who actually cares about conservative values. Jonah tweeted something about the 25th Amendment, which is when a president is not capable of carrying out his constitutional duties, the cabinet gets together and basically removes him from power. And I'm wondering if, I don't think he would tweet something like that lightly. I know he wouldn't. And when you're looking at what's going on, the violence going on the U.S. Capitol right now, something we have never seen in the United States. I'm wondering whether or not that's something that the cabinet should consider. But we'll talk about that in 1 second. I want to go right now to the White House where Caitlin Collins is. And Caitlin, this is absolutely disgusting, and it is entirely President Trump's fault, aided and abetted by his supporters. Is he going to do anything to stop it?
So far, he hasn't. Jake, he's only put out 2 tweets. His last one said, the people on Capitol Hill should remain peaceful. And if you're looking at those scenes, nothing about that is peaceful, given that we are seeing armed standoffs, a woman being shot, reinforcements being sent to the Hill. And instead, the president is not acting like this is the reality that's happening, even though he is currently sitting in the West Wing watching this coverage unfold, I am told, by multiple people. And Jake, the president is being encouraged by staff to put out a stronger statement about what is happening with his supporters on Capitol Hill right now. But so far, he has declined to do so, and he has declined to tell them to get out of the building. Instead, he has only sent out those 2 tweets, including the one asking them to remain peaceful, saying we are the party of law and order. But Jake, clearly these are his supporters. They are wearing his sweatshirts and waving his flags. And the president is refusing advice from staff to put out a stronger statement on what you were seeing happening right now.
I wonder if there is anybody with a conscience in the cabinet who is considering doing anything to stop this, because this is a nation of laws, and there is a provision in the Constitution, the 25th Amendment, to step in when the president is not capable of governing. Let me go to Jim Acosta right now. Jim, what are you hearing from people inside the White House? This is an absolutely revolting, in both senses of the word, display. And it is President Trump inspired this, encouraged this, is not stopping it, is entirely responsible.
Oh, he's totally responsible, Jake, no question about it. I should point out in just the last minute, Kayleigh McEnany, the outgoing White House press secretary, she just put out a tweet saying that the president, at his direction, has ordered the National Guard over to the U.S. Capitol to get control of the situation. Her tweet says the National Guard is on the way along with other federal protective services. We reiterate President Trump's call against violence and to remain peaceful. That is the totality of that tweet from the White House press secretary, Jake. But I will tell you, this is not sufficient. As you know, Jake, we have a White House briefing room. It has lights. It has cameras. It has people ready for the President of the United States or the White House press secretary or the chief of staff, at the very least, to come in and call for calm. That is not happening. They're putting out tweets. That's it. That is the entirety of their response at this point, and it's just insufficient. I walked up to the upper press area of the West Wing just a short time ago. That's where the press secretary has her office, other staffers on the comm staff, and so on. These young press aides, they're the last ones who are here. They're sort of the dead enders of the Trump administration. They seem dumbstruck. They seem shell-shocked. Looking at their faces, they just don't seem to understand what is unfolding around them, and it is astonishing. I will tell you, I've never seen anything quite like it in my 8 years covering the White House. A White House staff that appears to be immobilized, incapable of dealing with the situation. And as Caitlin was just saying, part of the reason why is because the president is just watching this on TV. He is now a spectator of the destruction that he has unleashed. He is not acting as a commander-in-chief anymore. He is just a television viewer-in-chief, watching all of this unfold, and it's disgraceful. It's just one of the most disgraceful things I think we're ever going to witness in our lives.
No, absolutely. Shame on him. Shame on what he has brought to this country, the destruction and the division, and now the violence we see at the U.S. Capitol, stopping the U.S. constitutional duties of the members of Congress from being carried out, to his everlasting shame. Anderson.
Jake, as you said, this is the legacy of Donald J. Trump, and frankly of every member of his family who has worked around him, who has supported him and enabled him. His sons, his daughter Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner. This is what they and all the enablers around him have wrought. The administration, which has called themselves the Law and Order Administration, the president who liked to call himself a law and order president. This is what their vision of law and order is. Imagine this was a group of black protesters. Imagine this was a group of thousands of Muslims who had stormed the Capitol. imagine what would happen then, how the reaction would have been different. Senator Santorum, you worked in, the Senate building. Seeing these images, what do you think?
Well, it's heartbreaking. I understand people's anger. I understand a lot of people feel that the country is at stake. But what I don't understand is how people have lost faith in our country to the point where they feel they have to do things like this. That somehow or another that there's just no other opportunity to deal with the challenges that we have in front of us other than to storm the Capitol building. That is considered to be a rational act by people who say they love America. If you love America, you understand the greatness of our country is the great institutions we have, and you defend those institutions. You defend our Constitution. You don't try to overturn through violence and protest the things that you say you value. And so I see what's going on here. I see people breaking into the Capitol and breaking into the Senate chamber, and all because they think that their country is being taken away from them. I would just say that you are adding to the hopelessness of people, and you're not doing anything to restore the greatness of America by tearing it down.
Then,
so it's.
Then we hear a lot of talk about, the understandably they are grieved. There have been generations of people in this country who have not had rights, who have not had the right to vote, who have not had the right to marry, who have not had the equality that most of us are able to take for granted because of the zip code we were born in and the color of our skin, or our status in society. And so the idea that these people feel themselves so aggrieved, I mean, there were generations of people who actually had real grievances. These are wannabe weekend warriors who are all just hopped up and filled with self-righteous indignation based on lies.
This is treason. This is treason. This is insurrection. This is rebellion. Period. I have heard people looking at small protests in Portland, Oregon, where people were tear gassed, beaten, kidnapped. And they said, no. Whatever you do to those protesters is okay, because we have to have law and order. We have to have law and order. This is rebellion. It is treason. It is lawlessness. It is unacceptable. And we are on a glide path at this point to having to look down the barrel of possible civil war. All the things we talk about up here sound so abstract. When we talk about the peaceful transfer of power, it just sounds like something from a book. This is what it looks like when you don't have a peaceful transfer of power. Abraham Lincoln talked about some people want rule or ruin. If I can't have it my way, I'll burn the whole country down. If I can't have it my way, I will burn the country down. So now I don't think that Republicans and conservatives can look at this and say this is okay. I'm calling on all of my conservative friends, my Republican friends, to say, what would I do if Black Lives Matter dropped 30,000 black people on the nation's capital and laid siege to the seat of power in the middle of a joint session of Congress and broke in? What would I say if Black Lives Matter do that? I'm going to say that right now. If Muslims did it? If Muslims dropped 30,000 Muslims on the seat of government in the middle of a joint session of Congress and ran in there and there was blood on the floor and tear gas, what would we be saying? If you believe that we are all one people, you don't like the hyphenations. If you believe that we're all one country, if you believe in law and order, if you're against traitors, if you are for patriotism, there needs to be a uniform denunciation from top to bottom of the Republican Party of what we're seeing. And the last thing I just want to say is this. For Keisha Lance Bottoms, a black woman who was a mayor of Atlanta, When they started rioting in Atlanta, she stood up and she said, "You stop it. You don't do this in Atlanta. You don't do this in America." She stood up to her base and told them to go home. Where is the President of the United States? Where is Donald Trump? Show the wisdom and the intelligence and the strength of a black woman mayor of Atlanta in the middle of this riot, and then we can get someplace.
Yeah, the difference here is that the mayor did not incite the riot.
That's right.
And the President of the United States did. Rick, I really respect what you said, but I don't understand how you don't understand how we got here. We know how we got here. We know that words matter. And when the President of the United States says again and again and again that these institutions are corrupt, they're rigged, the election was fraudulent, they're stealing it from you, when he goes out and addresses these very people today and tells them that they have to be strong and urges them to march down to the Capitol, I don't understand how you don't understand how this happened. We know how it happened. And he is culpable for this. You know, Winston Churchill said, "Dictators ride to and fro upon tigers which they dare not dismount, and the tigers are getting hungry." The president sits in the White House, and the tigers are loose at the Capitol. Let me just say one more thing, Gloria. I am the son of an immigrant who fled a country because of scenes like this and came to the United States because this was a country of law. This is a country of laws, and many of us share that story. I am in tears today to see this scene. This is not an American scene, and this was not a necessary scene. And I understand completely why it happened.
Gloria?
I'm heartbroken. I spent 10 years walking up and down those steps, covering Capitol Hill, having a great deal of respect for the people who serve in that Capitol. Most of the time, by the way, talking about policy, even with Senator Santorum over there. And I watched this today, and I said, that's my Capitol. That's my house. That's our house. And these are domestic terrorists. They're ripping it apart. And then I saw a tweet by Ivanka Trump, which she took down, which called them American patriots. She said, any security breach is unacceptable, et cetera, but she called them American patriots. That is not what I call them. These are people who march there to do damage. And they march there to do damage in the middle of a constitutional session in which a presidential election, free and fair, was being certified. And you have to go back to what the president, this is what David is talking about, what the president said earlier today in his speech. And he said, we're going to walk down to the Capitol. We're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, the ones who support him. We're probably not going to be cheering because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength and you have to be strong. So we'll walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. And that was permission. That was permission.
And as we speak, the man who is responsible for all of this, Donald J. Trump, is in the White House watching this on TV, as he has been for much of his administration, both a president and just an observer, watching these moments pass by. And this is all part of his grift. These people have stormed the Capitol, have threatened our democracy, have spurred insurrection and treason in order for a grift that's going on being centered in the White House. The grift of the Trump family raising money off of this, raising money off these lies. And the president is just standing there watching it on television, surrounded by his coterie of enablers. I want to go back to Wolf.
It's hard to believe, Anderson, what's going on here in the United States Capitol right now. I've been around here for a long time. I've never seen anything like this. I never thought I would see an armed mob like this break windows and get into the United States Capitol. and do what they're doing. And you can see what's going on. These individuals, they should be arrested immediately. I assume some of them will be. There is videotape. We see their faces. We see what they're doing. They are illegally breaking into the United States Capitol, endangering members of the House of Representatives, members of the U.S. Senate as well. You see what's happening on the floor of the Senate and the House. Law enforcement are raising their weapons to deal with these mob individuals. I don't want to call them protesters. They're not protesters. They're people who are engaged in an insurrection that will fail. They will be arrested. We are now told that members of the U.S. military's National Guard from Maryland and Virginia are on the way. Major numbers are coming in to deal with this enormous threat to the U.S. democracy. Only 14 days left. 14 days until the inauguration, when Joe Biden will become the president of the United States. I can only imagine the security that is going to be around Washington, D.C. over these next 14 days as we await the inauguration of Joe Biden as president. 14 days until Donald Trump leaves office. Pamela, you're getting some new information.
That's right. We're told that multiple officers have been injured in the midst of the chaos that we are seeing, with at least one officer, Wolf, transported to the hospital. Multiple sources tell me and my colleague Noah Gray. Just to give you a sense of what this means with this officer being transported to the hospital, it seems to be they are only transporting higher priority cases. So although we don't know what the injury is, that gives you a clue. We know that EMS is on the scene there. They are triaging. A woman was shot in the chest on Capitol grounds earlier today. We don't know the circumstances of that. But what we do know, Wolf, is that law enforcement is simply overwhelmed. You report that the National Guard is now on its way. But earlier today, one law enforcement officer sent a distress call from inside the Capitol building because it was getting so out of hand. I do know from talking to sources that police from surrounding areas are coming, from Virginia State Police, Montgomery County, Maryland Police, Prince George's County. And now multiple officers have been injured, with at least one transported to the hospital. And we're now seeing police in riot gear there, Wolf, trying to contain the crowds, trying to bring a sense of calmness to the chaos.
Yeah, the entire D.C. National Guard has now been activated, Pamela, and they're going to be joined by Maryland and Virginia. Military personnel, military troops, they're coming into Washington, D.C. right now. Manu, you're inside the Capitol. We knew that there was a session going on. The vice president was there. The members of the House and the Senate, they had to be evacuated under emergency circumstances. What's the latest?
Yeah, we don't know yet if the joint session of Congress will convene, when it will reconvene, when it will happen. Will it happen tonight? Will it happen afterwards? Because, of course, this is a critical step in making sure that the next president of the United States, who got the electoral votes to make him the next president, Joe Biden, is inaugurated by January 20th. Uncertain. I've been checking in with top Democrats and Republicans about it. They're just, right now, the situation is the one before them. They need to get this under control. There are still protesters in the building who have gone into all corners of the building. In a stunning photo that we are seeing right now, a protester actually in the office of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, leaving, as I want to direct you to that manila folder right there, as you can see, look in there. It says, "We will not back down." Someone leaving a message for the House Speaker in her suite. And I can tell you from spending time, and there's the protester right there. You can see this individual here, this rioter who has broken into the Capitol in Nancy Pelosi's office there with his feet up, leaving that note, "We will not back down." And I can tell you, Wolf, in covering this building for many years and covering Nancy Pelosi's office, it is a heavily fortified office. There are detail around her at all times. There are police officers nearby. You can't just walk in to the Speaker's office. But here you're seeing a pro-Trump demonstrator, someone who broken into this building with scores of other individuals. This individual coming into the speaker's office and saying, leaving that message for the speaker. Now, the speaker herself has just put out a statement along with the Senate Democratic leader saying, we are calling on President Trump to demand that all protesters leave the U.S. Capitol and Capitol grounds immediately. We're hearing some concerns, too, of being raised by Republicans as well, not demanding going as far as the Democrats are. But nevertheless, it's uncertain how this gets resolved, when it gets resolved, when they'll have that joint session of Congress. But protesters getting in all sorts of the sides of the building. But as I reported just earlier, there is still the Senate's wing of the building appears to be secure at the moment. The protesters have been pushed to the center of the Capitol. They're being escorted out. Where else they are at the building is a very big building, big complex, remains to be seen, and whether the police can get it under control with the National Guard will be the big question next, Wolf.
It's a horrible, horrible situation that's unfolding here in Washington, D.C., and we can't overemphasize how dangerous this is right now. Caitlin, you're over at the White House. I saw a statement that the Vice President, Mike Pence, who was evacuated from the U.S. Senate, put out. He went further than the president, saying the violence and destruction taking place at the U.S. Capitol must stop, and it must stop now. Anyone involved must respect law enforcement officers and immediately leave the building. He added, peaceful protest is the right of every American, but this attack, he used the word attack, on our Capitol will not be tolerated, and those involved will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The Vice President, Mike Pence, Caitlin, clearly angry.
Yeah, and Wolf, he was there as this broke out, as they started breaching the building, and that's why the vice president and other leadership had to be evacuated because of what's going on. And now he has put out a much more forceful statement than we have seen coming from President Trump, who I'm told has been watching all of this unfold, because Mike Pence is actually telling people to leave the building. That is a pretty simple request that you have not seen the president carry out, Wolf, and that comes as we are told staff are trying to get the president to put out a more forceful statement. But Wolf, he has so far refused to do so, and I'm told has been much more focused on the events that were happening shortly before this happened. And of course, that was the vice president up on Capitol Hill as Congress was meeting to certify these electors and Joe Biden's win, when of course shortly before he said he was going to defy the president and not follow through, not try to make any attempts to overturn the results of the election or reject these electors, which of course he did not have the power to do. But the president has been consumed by that. He has not stopped talking about what Mike Pence has done, and he is more focused on that than what you are seeing unfold from his own supporters on Capitol Hill, this chaos that is going on. And the president so far is still watching all of this go on from the White House, but has not come out to the podium. He has not gone on any kind of any television or in front of cameras to say that these people, that his supporters waving his flags and wearing his paraphernalia, need to get out of the building. Instead, he told them to remain peaceful, which of course, Wolf, they are not. But instead, the president himself has been more focused on what Pence did before all of this broke out than what is actually going on now.
It's really an awful, awful situation that the president of the United States is totally neglecting his responsibilities as the commander-in-chief. He's got enormous responsibilities. He's got 14 days left. He only cares about himself. John King, what does that say to you, that we have a president here in Washington, D.C., only 14 days left, but clearly has only one thing in mind: how can he overturn a democratically held election in the United States?
It is sad to say, Wolf, but it's not a surprise to say that the president has been consistent in failing this leadership test when there are obvious questions of right and wrong, black and white questions of right and wrong before him. You and I covered the White House for quite a long time. Donald Trump is the president who said there were good people on both sides in Charlottesville. No, there were not. Donald Trump is the president who refuses to criticize the QAnon crackpot conspiracy theory, which peddles incredibly reckless rumors about the United States government and people involved in it. Because those people support him, he says, well, he thinks they're good people. These are his supporters. They are storming the United States Capitol. Many of them may have come here for protest, but it has developed into something much worse than that. Dangerous, destructive, illegal, scary, violent, and it is his job to call it out as it is. The fact that Caitlin says the vice president is being more forceful tells you quite a bit. The fact that Jim Acosta and others on our White House team say the president has been watching this all day long, he's watching this and doing nothing. Now, he will say, as he has said in the past, his second tweet was a little tougher than the first tweet. He has authorized the National Guard to go and help. Those are steps that may help a bit, but the challenge of leadership is to stand up to your people when they're doing something that is wrong and tell them they need to back down. And it begins with the president, but it's not just him. The people in that building who keep saying, let's appoint a commission to look again into allegations of election fraud that have been brought to more than 60 court cases across the country and rejected out of hand. One of the tests of leadership is to look the people who support you in the eye and say, we are wrong, or it is over, and we are done. So it's not just the president, it's those supporting him in that building, too. And it'll be fascinating for me to see, A, will the president wake up here and say something publicly with a camera pointed at him? And then B, what will his supporters in that Capitol, when they resume the debate about certifying Joe Biden's election as president, will some of these Republicans realize what they're doing is not only a fantasy, but it's a dangerous fantasy, and they need to back down?
Yeah, we're told that the entire D.C. National Guard, thousands of troops here in the nation's capital, the entire National Guard has been activated by the U.S. Department of Defense following this mob that has attacked the U.S. Capitol. Phil Mattingly is up on Capitol Hill right now. You're getting more very disturbing information. What are you learning?
Yeah, Wolf, I was talking with a couple sources aligned with the Capitol Police who were trying to kind of walk me through what's occurred over the course of the last hour and a half. And in the words of one, they were, quote, simply overwhelmed. They did not expect that the outline barriers, the ones that are about 100 yards away from the Capitol building, would be breached. Once those were breached, they were stunned that the protesters, in the words of this individual, that the protesters actually walked up the steps on both the House side, on the Senate side, and the center steps, and then were willing to break through the windows. Now, what's been going on inside the Capitol is a couple of things. The first priority for the Capitol Police and for law enforcement inside was to secure leadership, make sure they are in a safe place. I'm told they are in a safe place, the leadership as well as the Senate Pro Tem, Chuck Grassley. I'm also told that based on everything that I've been talking to up to this point, all lawmakers are safe as well. They are in an undisclosed location. We are going to keep it that way for the time being. Now, the process is what's been, I think, most unusual as the Capitol Police have tried to get their arms around this, is how to actually get the protesters out of the Capitol building right now. They have been moving kind of starting with the floors, the House floor and the Senate floor, and trying to push the protesters into a single place. I'm not going to call them protesters, push the rioters, the trespassers into a single place where they can then escort them out of the Capitol. Slowly but surely, I'm told, they are making progress. I heard Manu report earlier. They believe the Senate floor is clear. I believe they're on the path to that on the House side as well. They are making progress with that. And it appears, according to my sources, that once that is complete, they will start to move in terms of what's going on the outside of the building. But, Wolf, I will tell you right now, from my vantage point on the east side of the Capitol, you can still see the steps on the Senate side, on the House side, and the center steps. You guys have camera footage of it as well, are still packed with individuals, some of them still moving towards the doors right now. So as the words of one source of mine inside the Capitol, this is not under control yet, but we feel like we're starting to get our arms around it. Obviously, it's a very, very fluid situation, and the most interesting thing, or one of the more interesting things, Wolf, I'm mostly getting text messages from lawmakers asking me if I know what's going on. They've been moved into secure locations, and at this point, they're just looking for information because they are seeing less and know less than pretty much everybody else on the outside, Wolf.
Yeah, a lot of these, and I don't want to call them protesters anymore. I want to call them rioters or mobsters. They're going to be arrested. One thing about Capitol Hill, as we all know, there are closed-circuit cameras all over the place. They have video of these rioters, these mobsters. They will be arrested if they broke windows, if they stormed the floor of the U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives. They will be going to jail, many of them, for what they are doing right now. They probably are too stupid to know that they're heading for jail at some point down the road. Brian Todd, you're up there on Capitol Hill. I want you to be safe, but tell us what you're seeing.
Right, Wolf, I'll set the scene for you as we walk a little bit toward the center steps of the Capitol here on the east side, where the crowd on the actual steps themselves has thinned out a little bit in the last few minutes. Not as many people packed on the steps there. We saw two groups of riot gear-clad police coming in about 20 minutes ago, probably not more than about 30 of them, and they did not come in with any sense of urgency, but they did come into the plaza, and they moved kind of toward the south that way a little bit. Again, but not with any sense of urgency. You've also seen Capitol Hill police up there on the balcony to the left side. Now we don't see them. Now you see more protesters up there on the balcony on the left side. There were some Capitol Hill police up there a short time ago, but they have since pulled back. You do get the sense that whatever police have come so far have probably gone inside the building to try to address the situation there. They have not come in force to this plaza of the east side of the Capitol. We also know there have been confrontations with police and others on the west side. That situation has been very tense. Earlier today, we saw a lot of heard and saw a lot of flashbangs going off. So that got very intense, as some people, as we've reported on CNN, have gotten injured as well, and at least one woman shot in the chest, very seriously injured. We also know that a police officer has been injured and taken to the hospital. But let's have our photojournalist Eddie Gross go past me here, and I can kind of set the scene too. Look, this was the most densely packed set of stairs. This is the center steps of the Capitol on the east front. And as you can see, still a lot of protesters there, and they don't seem to be too worried. They may get pushed out of there soon. We don't know. We don't know when larger groups of police or National Guardsmen will show up here and what they're going to do when they do. But we can tell you that this crowd has thinned out a little bit. And Eddie, if you can just move to your right, to our right, you see some police over there on that side. That's the Senate side of the Capitol building. You see some police officers standing there. There were more people on that set of steps earlier too, and going almost up, toward the top. But they've kind of contained that group over there. There was another set of protesters here on the House side steps. And Eddie, let's go forward here a little bit.
All right, hold on a minute, Brian. The president-elect is about to speak.
It's an inconvenience, but I'm sorry for the reason. I've delayed coming out to speak to you. I initially was going to talk about the economy, but all of you have been watching what I've been watching. At this hour, our democracy is under an unprecedented assault, unlike anything we've seen in modern times. An assault on the citadel of liberty, the Capitol itself. An assault on the people's representatives and the Capitol Hill police, sworn to protect them, and the public servants who work at the heart of our republic. An assault on the rule of law like few times we've ever seen it. An assault on the most sacred of American undertakings, the doing of the people's business. Let me be very clear. The scenes of chaos at the Capitol do not reflect a true America, do not represent who we are. What we're seeing are a small number of extremists dedicated to lawlessness. This is not dissent. It's disorder. It's chaos. It borders on sedition. And it must end now. I call on this mob to pull back and allow the work of democracy to go forward. You've heard me say before in different contexts, the words of a president matter, no matter how good or bad that president is. At their best, the words of a president can inspire. At their worst, they can incite. Therefore, I call on President Trump to go on national television now to fulfill his oath and defend the Constitution and demand an end to this siege, to storm the Capitol, to smash windows, to occupy offices, the floor of the United States Senate, rummaging through desks, on the Capitol, on the House of Representatives, threatening the safety of duly elected officials. It's not protest, it's insurrection. The world's watching. Like so many other Americans, I am genuinely shocked and saddened that our nation, so long the beacon of light and hope for democracy, has come to such a dark moment. Through war and strife, America's endured much. And we will endure here, and we will prevail again, and we'll prevail now. The work of the moment and the work of the next 4 years must be the restoration of democracy, of decency, honor, respect, the rule of law, just plain, simple decency. The renewal of the politics. It's about solving problems, looking out for one another, not stoking the flames of hate and chaos. As I said, America is about honor, decency, respect, tolerance. That's who we are. That's who we've always been. The certification of the Electoral College vote is supposed to be a sacred ritual, which we affirm. The purpose is to affirm the majesty of American democracy. But today's reminder, a painful one, that democracy is fragile, and to preserve it requires people of goodwill, leaders of the courage to stand up, who are devoted not to the pursuit of power, or the personal interest pursuits of their own selfish interest at any cost, but of the common good. Think what our children watching television is thinking. Think what the rest of the world is looking at. For nearly 2.5 centuries, we, the people, in search of a more perfect union, have kept our eyes on that common good. America is so much better than what we've seen today. Watching the scenes from the Capitol, I was reminded, as I prepared other speeches in the past, I was reminded of the words of Abraham Lincoln in his annual message to Congress, whose work has today been interrupted by chaos. Here's what Lincoln said. He said, "We shall nobly save or merely lose the last best hope on earth." Went on to say, "The way is plain, peaceful, generous, just. A way which, if followed, the world will forever applaud and God must forever bless." The way is plain here, too. That's who we are. It's the way of democracy, of respect, of decency, of honor, and commitment as patriots to this nation. Notwithstanding what I saw today and we're seeing today, I remain optimistic about the incredible opportunities. There has never been anything we can't do when we do it together. And this god-awful display today is bringing home to every Republican and Democrat and Independent in the nation that we must step up. This is the United States of America. There's never, ever, 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 ever been a thing we've tried to do that we've done it together. We've not been able to do it. So, President Trump, step up. May God bless America. May God protect our troops and all those folks at the Capitol who are trying to preserve order. Thank you, and I'm sorry to have kept you waiting.
President-elect Joe Biden in Wilmington, Delaware. He will become the 46th president of the United States in 2 weeks from today. He asked for President Trump to step up, to have a televised press conference to stop the violence being committed in his name for his conspiracy theory-fed cause that the election was somehow not fair. I do think, Abby, as you noted when Biden said that probably will make Trump even less likely to do it, even though, of course, it is the right thing.
Yeah, I was all the way in.
To do the right thing in this moment. And as our colleague Caitlin Collins has reported, the president is preoccupied with other things. He has not done what many of his aides want him to do, which is to be more forceful on this. And it's because he doesn't want to. The people who are in the Capitol right now are his supporters. They are doing this in his name. And if there is one thing that President Trump doesn't want to do, it is to condemn people who love him. And the nation is kind of in a catch-22 moment right now. President Trump could come out and say something, but I guarantee you it is not going to be the right thing. But if he says nothing, this madness will continue. So there's really not a great way forward here. But I do wonder if the members of Congress who were at some point in that building, who were standing up and backing up this ridiculous coup attempt, will have a moment of reckoning for themselves and think about what the consequences are of humoring this kind of misinformation and these kinds of lies. That might be the really important question as we move forward, because at some point Congress has to reconvene and finish the work that they started this morning so that the country can move forward.
I think one other point that we need to make here is this didn't just happen, right? These aren't just people who decided to take matters into their own hands. They were encouraged to do so. Today, at the rally that President Trump spoke at, Rudy Giuliani, his, whatever he is, attorney, said that they would engage in trial by combat. Trial by combat was the term he used. Donald Trump Jr. said about Republicans who were not going to we're going to go to Manu Raji right now. He's being evacuated from Capitol Hill. Manu, tell us what's going on.
Yeah, gripping this is from where we were in our office. The news from the Senate side of the Capitol. We're being taken to an undisclosed location here in the building. As I'm walking through the Capitol, dozens and dozens of police officers in riot gear and wearing gas masks. And I can tell you, it smells like the tear gas that came off in this building. Has a smell to it in this building. As I'm walking through the tunnels here, there's debris everywhere. The rioters clearly have gone hard. We're going to hard. Oh, sorry. These rioters are clearly have gone breached all elements of this building. You're seeing debris, trash, all in the elevators, things knocked down, posts knocked down, and this is clearly a sign of how they have gone into all parts of this building. But as I can tell you, walking through here, none of these rioters I've seen as we're walking through. The Capitol Police has struggled, but they have clearly ensured that some areas of this building are secure as they have tried to get a hold of this situation, and they're escorting a bunch of us to an undisclosed location to ensure that as they try to get a hold of these protesters and arrest them, these rioters, trespassers, get them out of this building, and try to make sure that all these locations in the Capitol can be secure, guys.
Yeah, well, stay safe, Manu, and you're right to change. They're not protesters, they're insurrectionists, or, I mean, we have a name for people who commit violence in the name of various political ideology. We call them terrorists. That's what we call people who commit acts of violence for a political or religious cause. In any case, Dana, what I wanted to finish saying was Rudy Giuliani this morning at that rally called for trial by combat. Donald Trump Jr. said to members of Congress who were not going to join this deranged attempt at a bloodless coup, well, now it's not bloodless anymore, said, quote, "We're coming for you and we're going to have a good time doing it. I suggest you choose wisely." Now, I'm sure that Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump Jr. will say that they were merely speaking figuratively, or they were talking about engaging in political combat. Maybe they were, maybe they were not. I think it's pretty clear that a lot of people took a different message from the rally in general.
Because these are people who have been completely fired up. I mean, there was a tinderbox. They were sitting in front of a tinderbox. And with those comments, they lit a match, and then they lit another match, and then they lit another one, and then they just threw it on. And Rudy Giuliani is not a dumb person. They know what they have in front of them. They know what they have fomented for all of these months. They're very well aware of it. You know, the irony is so rich. It's frankly disgusting that this is a campaign that at one point veered into the law and order messaging. We're the law and order campaign. I'm going to be the law and order president. That's the opposite of law and order. And I'm also thinking, Jake, I think you were up on Capitol Hill around 9/11. Were you not? Yeah,
absolutely.
And I was too. And this is very, very different in a million ways. The way it is not is the fear. I remember being where Manu is and having to walk, you know, having to run and having to be told by people who are there to protect you that they can't protect you, that they're not equipped for it because of something that they didn't expect. Now, this they probably should have expected, at least to some degree, but it is a frightening thing when that happens, when you are in the belly and the symbol and the center of our democratic institution, the United States Capitol, and that happens. And that has happened, and it continues to happen. And you have the people who are elected by Americans all over this country just a couple of months ago in that Capitol in undisclosed locations because it is not safe for them to go out. And I will just say one little glimmer of hope. I was told that there are some top House members in an undisclosed location together, Republicans and Democrats together. And I was told that Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic Conference Chair, Liz Cheney, the Republican Conference Chair, jointly said to these members who were gathered there, they had a defiant message saying, we're not going to let them stop us. We're going to get back out there as soon as it's safe and go back to the House floor as soon as we can and continue the business that is constitutionally mandated.
Yeah, this is not going to end in anything other than Joe Biden being sworn in 2 weeks and Kamala Harris being sworn in 2 weeks. But I want people out there to remember how they feel right now as they watch these images live, because there is going to be an attempt by the people who were part of this effort. President Trump, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Hawley, etc. There is going to be an attempt to whitewash what's going on right now. President Trump has delivered a message. It has been taped, and we are going to bring that to... Are we ready to go with that live right now? Okay, we're going to go to that right now. Here's a message from President Trump.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us. From me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel, but go home and go home in peace.
Now, we brought that to you because President Trump on the tape says to his supporters who are right now conducting an armed insurrection on the U.S. Capitol, he tells them to go home. But I also want to note that in that video, he lies about the election being stolen and pours more fuel on the fire. He continues his shameful behavior of lying to his supporters about what happened. It is absolutely disgraceful. I hope they listen to the part in which he said for them to go home. But to be completely frank, there were mixed messages in that video. And I feel ambivalent about the fact that we even aired it, to be honest, although I certainly understand and support the idea that we did. But the idea that the president is not even capable of saying, please go home. He continues to lie to his supporters. And what I wanted to say before, Abby, is I want people to remember how they feel watching these images of the United States Capitol being taken over. And these clear acts of sedition and violence and terrorism by Trump supporters, because there's going to be an attempt to whitewash and pretend this didn't happen.
people might attempt to do that, but what we're seeing is pretty clear what is happening. And I think now we have to ask the question, is President Trump capable of leading this country even for the next 13 days? He is inciting violence against the government itself, lawlessness, vandalism, and he's also completely MIA in terms of his principal job, which is to keep this country safe, to protect Americans. Let's not even talk about the fact that we're still in the middle of a pandemic. We haven't talked about that today.
Yesterday, the deadliest day of the pandemic so far.
This is a president who is not paying attention to the job and is focused on just one thing, which is his own sense of grievance. That video was a disgrace. The idea that today, on the day that Congress intends to count the electoral votes for Joe Biden, who will be the next president of the United States, Donald Trump still refuses to say that he lost a democratically held election in the United States of America is a profound shame. And it makes us a mockery in the world. As we go around the world talking about democracy, we have a president who is inciting violence at the Capitol and won't acknowledge that he lost an election.
No, I don't understand how the United States, which regularly objects to elections taking place in other countries, Pakistan, Russia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, regularly engages in criticism of other countries' elections. What is Senator Hawley or Senator Cruz going to say when Vladimir Putin says it's interesting that you're faulting us for this because you yourself objected to an election and you yourself helped inspire an armed insurrection on Capitol Hill?
You're exactly right. And the notion of consistency and clarity of message and purpose is unfortunately so far behind us with these issues. And we just have to say over and over again, because what we just heard from the president was so, aside from the fact that he said go home, which was the appropriate thing to say, he said that the election was stolen from us. No, that is what you're seeing on Capitol Hill right now.
Exactly.
What you're seeing on Capitol Hill right now are people, to quote you, Abby, in his name, going to the Capitol, trying to steal the election for Donald Trump, the election that Mitch McConnell stood on the Senate floor just hours beforehand, not even hours, minutes before this happened, and said, this wasn't even close. This wasn't even close. Donald Trump didn't even come close to winning this election. That is the reality. That is the top Republican in the United States Senate saying that, and saying it for a reason. And the Republicans you were talking about, Josh Hawley, I don't know yet about him, but Senator Cruz, I'm already hearing from an aide to him, you know, this is not what he wanted. I think he also tweeted, violence is not the right way to go, so on and so forth, that he was doing his constitutional duty, which might, not duty, he's doing what is allowed in the Constitution. And Democrats
but he wasn't.
Well, and
he was calling for something else.
Right. Well, Democrats in the past, this is almost besides the point because of what's going on here, but Democrats in the past, and you've pointed this out, have objected during this process, but they haven't done it at the behest of a candidate who refuses to concede the election. That has never happened, and that is the big difference here, because that is what these people, these rioters, are responding to. They're responding to the president and his enablers on Capitol Hill.
You know, I think about how we started this day, and I you know, not looking back too far, but just to recall that hours ago, we were talking about the way in which Republicans had fed these conspiracy theories and coddled them for many, many months and even years, living in this imaginary world created by Donald Trump. And they had lost control of that, not knowing that hours later we'd be looking at this incredible scene. But this is the consequence of years of people in Washington refusing to have the courage to stand up and say, right is right and wrong is wrong, and there are facts and there are fictions in the world. And there was a time in this town when the differences between the two parties were about policy, they were about taxation, they were about the role of government. Now the differences between the two parties are about who believes in facts and who doesn't.
Ulysses
That
S.
should not be the case, but that is what we are dealing with right now. And I know, because I talk to Republicans all the time who privately will say that they want to get back to that time where they were talking about things that really mattered, but they can't because they have nurtured this monster and now it is devouring them.
Ulysses S. Grant said in 1861, there are now but two parties, patriots and traitors. And it is time for the Kevin McCarthys and the Josh Hawleys of the world to decide which party they're in. I have my idea about what that might be. Anderson?
Jake,
Wolf.
thanks very much. We
to say in the midst of all of this horrendous news that's going on here in Washington, something that none of us ever expected we would see in the nation's capital. I just want to make it official right now. CNN can now project that the Democrats will be the majority in the U.S. Senate. John Ossoff, the Democratic candidate in Georgia, he is defeating David Perdue, the Republican candidate. Earlier, we projected that the Democrat Raphael Warnock will beat Kelly Loeffler, the Republican candidate. So it's 50-50 in the new U.S. Senate. But the new Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, she will be, according to the Constitution, the President of the Senate, so she will break the ties. So the Democrats will be in the majority, the Republicans will be in the minority. Anderson, this is important, but let's get back to this explosive situation that's developing here in the nation's capital. As I keep saying, something I never thought I would see.
Yeah, we started out this day saying that it is going to be historic, and it certainly is in a whole bunch of different ways. Obviously, Georgia turning blue is one of them. But we continue to watch the situation where there are still insurrectionists, treasonous people on the grounds of the Capitol, high-fiving each other, as you see there, just wandering around. Police are trying to maintain order, trying to get control back of the building and its grounds. David Axelrod, we heard from President-elect Biden saying, President Trump, stand up, speak out. President did release a video that was frankly shameful.
Not exactly what Biden had in mind, I think.
How do you see this day?
Well, you know, first of all, let me say about Biden's remarks, it underscores what we've seen since the election, because basically Donald Trump has resigned the presidency as of his election. He's just been working on this project of persuading people that the election was stolen from him, as we've dealt with a pandemic, a cyber attack from Russia, and many other problems.
He's been running a grift while people are dying.
And in each instance, Biden has stood up and played the role that people expect a president to play, and he did it again today and said the things that you would expect a president of the United States to say. As for the president's video, Dana was exactly right. I mean, there was a perfunctory message, which is go home, let's not play into their hands. But as he called these treasonous folks very special. And he repeated the idea that the election was stolen from us, stolen from you, stolen from our country. That is the jet fuel that is propelling this insurrection at the Capitol, this lie, and he just used the video to repeat it again.
Can I just say, we're watching these images of people, some of them leaving the Capitol grounds, wandering back, high-fiving each other, smiling, quite pleased with themselves for what they have done today, and it's truly just outrageous and pathetic. Each of these people should be shamed for what they have done today. We should look at their faces, and if I was standing on that street, look at them. They're high-fiving each other for this deplorable display of completely unpatriotic, completely against law and order, completely unconstitutional behavior. It's stunning, and they're going to go back, to the Olive Garden and to the Holiday Inn that they're staying at in the Garden Marriott, and they're going to have some drinks, and they're going to talk about the great day that they had in Washington, and they really did something and stand up for something. And they stood up for nothing other than mayhem, and a man who is, in the despicable waning days of a failed presidency.
Where are the arrests? This is what I want to know. These are people who invaded my capital
I mean, look at
and
this
your
buffoon
capital.
dressed up as the revolutionary. There's nothing revolutionary about him.
Nothing. But where are the arrests? These are people who are breaking the law, who are breaking into a federal building, which Joe Biden called the Citadel of Liberty. And the President of the United States spoke about not at all. Didn't talk about the Capitol, didn't talk about the importance of the Capitol. He certainly wasn't going to talk about the importance of what was going on in the Capitol because it was certifying Joe Biden's election and not his election. And it was so stunning to me that the president, in his little speech, first of all, by the way, did not give it from inside the White House, not from a podium inside the White House. David Axelrod, you know a lot about this, and about the optics of this. Not from a podium with a presidential seal, but rather from the garden somewhere.
He stood at one podium today, and that was at, the rally of these people.
Right. Stood outside the White House, and then just did a little Twitter thing after Joe Biden said to him, "You better go out there and do this."
How is it possible?
And then he said, "We love you."
How is it possible that the police, the Capitol Police, the Department of Homeland Security, I know the head of the Department of Homeland Security is on some sort of farewell tour in the Middle East, I believe, right now, Chad Wolf, but how is it possible that all of these law enforcement organizations who, I got to say again, and Van raised this point earlier, when it was Black Lives Matter, they had people in riot gear ringing the Capitol, as if it was going to be stormed when it wasn't. Today, when it was clear the president himself was encouraging people to march on the Capitol, it's just officers not even in riot gear.
Yeah, look, I think that double standard is something that's driving a lot of people nuts. But let's just take a step back. We don't know what we're looking at yet. Is this the end of something or the beginning of something?
Right.
Is this the death throes of something ugly in our country, desperate, about to go away, and then the vision that Biden talked about is going to then rise up? Or is these the birth pangs of a worse disorder? That's where we are right now tonight. And I think the country's got to make a decision. I don't want to be partisan. I understand some of these people, if their social media feed is only showing them example after example of anecdotes of vote theft, statistical, magical thinking that says that the election was impossible. And so they've been bombarded with that. And because they've been bombarded with that, they're angry. Fine, you have a right to be angry. You don't have a right to insurrection. You don't have a right to sedition. You don't have a right to break into buildings and to hurt police officers. There has to be a line. And I think if we can just come back together and assert that line, we can disagree. But we have to do a better job of understanding each other. So what I want to say is, let's declare that this is the end of something. This can never happen again. We need to snuff this out tonight. We need to hear from every leader, left, right, black, white, brown, and otherwise, that this is unacceptable in America, period. And we can work through our differences another way. But if we're not careful, we could talk ourselves into this being the beginning of something. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I would just, first off, I think that's a good statement. I can't imagine, I know you disagree with me on this, but I can't imagine that this is what the president wanted, that he wanted his people to break into the Capitol and storm the United States Senate and break windows.
Of course he did.
No,
of course he did. He wanted to delay this day as long as possible. That was his whole, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was his whole strategy.
Yeah.
In fact, his whole legal strategy was just have the vice president object to this, have it go to the courts, not that it would mean anything, but it would just delay it. And this is another delaying time.
I understand that he wanted the people to go to the Capitol. I disagree. I don't think. And if he did, then he's more foolish than I think he is. Because this is a bad, bad day for Donald Trump and a bad day for what Donald Trump is trying to accomplish and a bad day to answer Van's question. My big concern is going forward that Donald Trump is going to stay on the scene, announce he's going to run for president again, and continue to mobilize and rally people to tear apart the Republican Party and the conservative movement going forward, and take on everybody with vengeance, that whoever opposed him, run against him in the primary, try to defeat. I think set back that movement in a very, very big way, because I don't know of anybody that I've been hearing from a lot of people And they, as they said, they understand, as Van said, we understand people's anger because they've been fed a lot of information about how crooked the election is, but they don't understand this. And they don't understand, breaking windows and taking over the House and Senate chambers and having a potential, I don't know who was armed and who wasn't, but the bottom line is this is wrong on everybody's count and not something that we are going to tolerate.
Let me ask you, the Republicans just lost the Senate. And, you had Donald Trump Jr. earlier this morning saying, this is Donald Trump's Republican Party, which we have said over and over and over again, which clearly it is now. Why would any Republican continue to follow this man as he goes off to Mar-a-Lago and with his $250 million? I know they want some of that money. I know they're afraid of a bad tweet. But, the GOP is becoming like a nihilistic death cult if they follow him.
Again, I think yesterday and today were two moments within the Republican Party that hopefully will give people in the party the opportunity to step back and say, do we want to sign this death pact? Well, because I believe it is a death pact.
And you really think that people may be at that point?
Well, I think so. Look, I'm hearing from a lot of people, and what I'm hearing is that we didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
And this is not acceptable, and we're not going to play along.
And we need to support that. I know, Gloria, you're trying again. I just want to say, let's try to create a glide path for people who want to break away from this. In other words, I think people have been saying it different ways. I just want to say it explicitly, clearly. If you want more of this, sign up for it. But if you don't, you need to be with...
Well, what did Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley do now?
Exactly.
Okay, what do they do now? The fact that they haven't said, okay, you know what, we'll come back, maybe we need to reconsider this, because this is what they are doing Donald Trump's bidding here. They know that their concerns are not going anywhere. And let me tell you one more thing. I just heard from somebody who is a good friend, has been a good friend to the president over the years, who is so disgusted that and this person said the president incited this.
Yes.
And he should be treated appropriately and promptly. What does that mean? And to echo what Abby said earlier, the question I now have is what happens over the next 2 weeks? This is not over. Does Congress come back now? Do Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz go back as if nothing
I think you're
occurred?
underestimating the impact of what happened today.
Well,
and
then
what
let's
that's
see
gonna
what they do.
Curb
But Rick,
any kind of enthusiasm for
I just want to say, one of the words, when the president said, there's never been anything like this where they can take it away from you, that is the essence of Trumpism. His message is they are taking this country away from you. And, we talk about how can this is an insurrection, which it is, and we talk about our Constitution, which it is. They have been told, Van talks about their social media feeds. It's the president himself who's been telling them for months and months and months. They have stolen the presidency of the United States away from you. These people feel like they are patriots.
They do.
They feel like they are patriots, and that is really dangerous.
I agree. And there's one thing to peacefully protest. There's another thing to do what's going on here. And looking at the results from Georgia from last night, any serious Politico is going to look at that and say, Donald Trump on the ballot may help us win, but there's no evidence that Donald Trump not on the ballot is a winning combination for the Republican Party if we follow him.
So does the Republican Party disown him? No.
I think, no, look, you have, 10 United States senators out of 50? And you heard the comments before this whole thing happened with McConnell and Toomey and many others standing up and saying, we're not following Donald Trump anymore.
Ben, and then we got to go to Wolf.
I just want to say, other countries like South Africa and other countries that have tried to get to a multiracial democracy that works for more people have a lot to teach us. We should be looking at Mandela and other people around the world. We are in danger of, democracies are fragile, as Biden said. But there are examples around the world that we can rely on. I wanted just to point that out.
Let's go back to Wolf. Wolf.
All right, Anderson, just moments ago, the president-elect of the United States said our democracy is under unprecedented assault. He is absolutely right. What's going on right now is unprecedented. Pamela Brown is with us. She's got some more headlines.
Yeah, that's right, Wolf. And here is the very latest right now on this major breaking news of a coup attempt as a pro-Trump mob of rioters invaded the U.S. Capitol. We've been seeing this playing out. Here are some live pictures right outside the Capitol. where hundreds of rioters have been for the last couple of hours. And just moments ago, we learned U.S. Marshals, the ATF, and U.S. Park Police, as well as FBI agents, are headed to the Capitol. Some already there. All 1,100 members of the D.C. National Guard have been activated, and hundreds of state troopers and local police officers from neighboring Virginia and Maryland are being deployed to deal with this unprecedented, disturbing, and frankly, undemocratic coup attempt. Now, sources tell CNN multiple officers have already been injured, with at least one being taken to the hospital. And inside the Capitol, on the House floor, you can see multiple officers right here with their guns drawn, locked in an armed standoff, as rioters outside broke the glass and tried to get into the House chamber. The members of Congress eventually evacuated, some currently at an undisclosed location. And on the Senate side, multiple rioters were able to get onto the Senate floor. Senators had just been debating an objection to the electoral vote count. And you can see them in this video roaming the floor where lawmakers were debating earlier today. And at one point, a Trump supporter stood on the platform there where Vice President Mike Pence had been minutes earlier. Look at this. Also at the Capitol, a source tells CNN one woman is in critical condition after being shot in the chest on Capitol grounds. We do not know where exactly this happened or who shot her. Wolf?
Yeah, these are really, really awful situations that are unfolding and continuing, by the way. Right now, Alex Marquardt is just outside the Capitol for us. Alex, where exactly are you and what are you seeing?
Hey there, Wolf. Well, we are on the northeastern side of the Capitol, on the Senate side that Pamela Brown was just talking about. And the situation that we're seeing right here might be best described as a standoff. It's been a bit of a status quo for about the last hour here. What you're looking at there is the northern side of the Capitol. Hundreds of rioters, of insurrectionists, as we've been calling them, gathering on the edge of the Capitol building. We did hear a number of bangs just a short time ago that did sound like flashbangs and movement from these rioters, which would indicate that they are, to some extent, and to a very small extent, Wolf, getting pushed back by law enforcement. We do see some law enforcement. I'm going to ask my cameraman, Ronnie McRae, to point up at the steps on the Senate side. You can see a line of police there. I'm not sure what agency they're from, whether they're Capitol Police or Metropolitan Police, but just a little ways farther down, you can still see that there are those rioters on the steps. So this is a face-off between the law enforcement and the rioters here. We have seen riot police showing up. Sir, I'm on TV. We have seen law enforcement show up over the course of the past 2 hours, but so far there has been no serious response by law enforcement just yet. Wolf, as you know, a curfew will go into effect in around an hour's time. There is no indication right now that these protesters have any inclination of going anywhere. There's no indication that they had heard the message from the president to go home. And I just want to highlight one thing that our colleague Anderson Cooper said. Back in last summer, when the president walked over to St. John's Church and had that entire area cleared out, those protesters were doing far less than something like storming the Capitol. And so far, we have seen very little in terms of response from law enforcement. Wolf?
All right, I want you to be careful over there. I know it's going to be dark very, very soon. I'm really worried about what's going to happen once it's dark outside. Pete Montine is also just outside the U.S. Capitol. Pete, where are you? What are you seeing?
Apparently between this mob of Trump supporters and police are way outnumbered by this mob here. You can see on the Capitol steps here, this is the Senate side, Capitol Police standing there. In fact, just a few moments ago, we saw two from this group of these rioters, walk up to the police, actually even walk beyond them for a moment. We also heard 3 loud bangs over on this side of the Capitol, what we think are now flashbangs, possibly tear gas. We heard a bit about that from Alex Marquardt. That led a lot of this group to file over here. from the steps leading up to the Capitol on this east side. Just to put this in a bit of context, you would never, ever see this many people, this many civilians up on the Capitol right now. We're just on the top side of the Capitol Visitor Center, which would be very, very locked down during normal times. One interesting thing that I have to note here, we're just now hearing a Metropolitan Police helicopter here, and we have seen some police officers, I assume police officers, on the roof, potentially snipers. They have been moving into place, vacillating here between peaceful and very quiet, but also a loud mob behind us as well. Wolf?
Yeah, the D.C. curfew ordered by the mayor goes into effect a little bit more than 2 hours from now, 6 p.m. Until 6 a.m. Brian Todd, you're also up there in the middle of all of this. Tell us what you're seeing.
Right, Wolf, we're at the center steps of the Capitol on the east side, and we're going to kind of take you in a little bit tighter. You still see some protesters here really not concerned about the police. There's a protester on top of a government vehicle there. They've been standing on these government vehicles over here. This staircase, this center steps was packed a short time ago, and the police were standing just kind of to the side watching them. The area where we saw, Alex and Pete reporting from a little bit earlier is over there. We did see some smoke from some smoke grenades being deployed over there, and then that crowd over there kind of pushed back. And as they reported, you see that line of Capitol Hill police officers there on the steps kind of containing that area. But listen, the protesters had overtaken those steps as well earlier. 3 sets of steps here on the east side of the Capitol had all been overtaken by protesters. Now, 2 of the 3 are pretty much clear. This one is still not. And as you can see, let's take another shot of these protesters here on top of this government vehicle. The police have not moved in force just yet. And it really, as everybody's been talking about all day, this just kind of reveals the stunning vulnerability that the Capitol has been left under today. And, you know, it's been evidence here on the east side, on the west side, where the confrontations with police were very tense. And we saw protesters climb these risers that were built specifically for the inauguration and start waving Trump flags on top of the risers. So they were allowed to, you know, get almost anywhere they wanted on the Capitol grounds today. And as of now, you know, we hear reports that the police are coming. We hear reports that the National Guard is coming in great numbers. You're not seeing it here, Wolf. This is, you know, if they're coming, they're taking their time. And these protesters are seemingly, you know, they're not inclined to leave, and they don't seem to be very worried at all right now.
It does look, though, Brian, like the crowd is thinning out a little bit right now as it's beginning to get dark.
They are thinning out. They've been thinning out a little bit over the past hour, but again, they're leaving on their own volition. They're not leaving because the police are pushing them out. The police really, we did see 2 lines of riot gear-clad police come through here, walking fairly slowly, and there were some protesters trailing behind them, yelling at them, kind of harassing them a little bit. So, you know, again, there's tension here, but the police, even though, you know, again, we're warned about the curfew at 6 o'clock, we're told that the police and National Guard are on the way here. But, you know, right now, if these crowds are leaving, they're leaving on their own. And we can show you another shot of over here. There was some movement here of some protesters, again, where the smoke grenades went off. And, you know, the rioters had been pushed back there after some smoke grenades went off a short time ago. So, again, these people, you know, are still here. Some of them say they're going to stay here, but, you know, when the police arrive in force, there could be some real tension here and possibly some violence.
Yeah, 2 hours until that curfew goes into effect. Brian, be safe over there. Be careful. The former D.C. police chief, Charles Ramsey, who was also the police commissioner in Philadelphia, is joining us right now. It's 1 hour from now, a little bit more than 1 hour from now. Chief Ramsey, you were the police chief here in the nation's capital. What do you think about this decision to have a curfew from 6 p.m. until 6 a.m.?
Well, I mean, it's a good move. These folks aren't going to pay any attention to it, though. But, I mean, the mayor's got to do what she's got to do. The bottom line is they've got to start clearing this, the Capitol grounds. I don't know what they're waiting on. I know they've activated and brought in National Guard, supposedly, from a couple different states, Maryland and Virginia, as well as the district. Maybe they're assembling somewhere and trying to get their battle plan together in terms of how they're going to handle it. I can look at the flags and tell that the wind's blowing pretty good, so you probably want to move in with the wind to your back in case you have to use chemical munitions or pepper spray or what have you. But they got to get them off the grounds. They've got to reestablish a perimeter. They've got to get them out of the building. And they need to get started as soon as they possibly can.
Because the mayor, in her statement that was released, Chief Ramsey, said as far as this curfew is concerned, during the hours of the curfew, no person other than persons designated by the mayor shall walk, bike, run, loiter, stand, or motor by car or other mode of transport upon any street, alley, park, or other public place within the district. When you were the police chief, did you ever have a curfew like that?
I don't recall. I mean, during the IMF World Bank, back in the early 2000s, there may have been a curfew. I just don't recall offhand, but nothing. We didn't handle anything like this. I mean, the Capitol Police got overwhelmed. There'll be a lot of people looking at what happened there. I mean, there's about 2,000 Capitol Police. I don't know why they didn't have enough people available to at least prevent this from happening in the first place. Of course, you can always hit a tipping point where you just get overwhelmed. But they got overwhelmed awful quick, and there's no way they should have gotten in that building, in my opinion. But we'll look at that later. I mean, that's kind of like the hot wash after the event. Right now, they got to retake the Capitol,
and they're
going to have to do it.
I assume, Chief Ramsey, they got to start arresting some of these people who broke windows and trespassed and just entered into a secure area.
Anybody inside that building, as far as I'm concerned, ought to be face down in handcuffs right now.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what they ought to be doing. I don't know what they're doing in there, but they need to be locking them up without question. But first, they got to gain control, and right now they don't have control. So yeah, but they're
as you and I know, there's a lot of closed-circuit cameras inside that U.S. Capitol, so they're going to have a lot of evidence if they want to start doing all of that. What also worries me, Chief Ramsey, is that there's 14 days until the inauguration. And I suspect the local police, the area police, Maryland, Virginia, military personnel, National Guard troops, they're going to be on alert right now, getting ready for the January 20th inauguration, because the president has basically suggested he wants these individuals, rioters, to come back.
Well, there's chatter on the internet now about Occupy D.C. And so I don't know if this is part of it or not. But that's not surprising. So, yeah, they're going to have to be on high alert. They're not going to be able to let these folks establish camps or anything like that. But their next challenge will be January 20th on the inauguration. But in the meantime, these next couple of days are going to be pretty dicey. And hopefully you don't get protesters show up that decide they're going to come out now in support of, Biden or what have you. I mean, this is a mess. So they better establish control as soon as possible. But let me tell you, it's not going to be pretty. They're going to have to use physical force to get these folks moving and out of there. But they've got to take back the Capitol. There's no two ways about it.
Chief Ramsey, stand by. We're looking at the riot police that are now beginning to converge up on Capitol Hill. Brian Todd, you're up there. You're watching what's going on. Tell us.
Okay, Wolf, so we just saw a line of riot police move up the right side of the center steps on the Capitol's east side there, and you see them now at the top of the stairs. They are pushing some of the rioters down they're not really pushing, actually. They're just lining the top of the stairs. Some of the rioters have just started moving down the stairs on their own, but again, not necessarily being pushed by the police, although the police, now you can see them walking down. So they're slowly walking some of these rioters off the steps, the center steps of the east side of the Capitol. And this, they're doing this now after several hours that these people have been out here, going inside the building, occupying the balconies, occupying the center steps, and also the south end steps and the north end steps of the east side of the Capitol here. Now you see the police kind of walking them slowly off of the steps. Now, this is unfolding peacefully right now. Let's hope that it stays that way. But a short time ago, Wolf, we can also tell you that rioters were standing on top of these cars and, waving flags and really just kind of throwing caution to the wind. And there were police not too far away just kind of watching them. But now some of the riot police are just kind of slowly and peacefully moving people off of these steps.
Yeah, let's see what happens. These are critical moments. So Chief Ramsey is still with us. You know, you were the police chief here in the District of Columbia, in the nation's capital, Chief Ramsey. We just got a statement from Samuel Holliday, the Director of Scholarship and Operations with the U.S. Capitol Historical Society. And listen to this. He says this is the first time the U.S. Capitol has been breached since the British attacked and burned the building in August of 1814 during the War of 1812. Just to give us a little historic perspective of what we're seeing, Chief Ramsey, right now, you and I assume, I never thought I would see this, and I assume you agree.
Yeah, I never thought I'd see that. I mean, I was always concerned about monuments like the Lincoln Memorial and places like that that would be a little more susceptible to having someone just show up and kind of, you know, take it over, but not the U.S. Capitol. I mean, that's pitiful when you really stop and think about it. There's no way they should have been able to breach the Capitol, period. But now that they have, now you got to get them out of there. And you got to do whatever you got to do to get them out of there. I mean, you just cannot allow this to continue. This isn't a protest. This is about as close to a coup attempt that the country's ever gotten to. You got a very weak guy sitting down there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I won't call him president because, in my opinion, he's not a president. I don't know what the hell he is, but he sure ain't my leader. And he's inciting all this. And then you got other people who are really egging it on by doing what they're doing. I mean, this is crazy. It's absolutely insane. And someone's got to take control. It's not going to be the guy sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania, but somebody's got to take control and deal with this situation because it's going to get worse. It will not get better on its own.
Yeah, it's really worrisome indeed. John King is with us, Chief Ramsey. I'll get back to you. But John, the president earlier in the day was basically telling these individuals, walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, head to Capitol Hill. We got to get tough, basically. That was his message, and we heard even stronger words from his so-called lawyer, Rudy Giuliani.
Right, and other allies of the president have talked about holding the Republicans who will not stand up and help the president push his baseless, reckless, just false claims of election fraud. And so this environment was created by the president and his allies. Now, they will say they didn't tell anyone to climb through the Capitol windows. They didn't tell anyone to break into the Speaker's office. They didn't tell anyone to break into the chambers. They will say that, but they encouraged this climate and they incited it. The president at one point today even saying he wanted to walk with them. Of course, he did not. That's what he does. He says things and then leaves it to others to do it. But so now you're in the leadership test challenge. And Wolf, to follow on your conversation with Chief Ramsey, I've been texting with a member of the Democratic leadership on Capitol Hill. And to the chief's point, there's a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, and a lot of questions about how this happened, about how the building was breached, about how they got to sit in the president's seat in the Senate, the presiding officer's seat in the Senate, about how somebody got into Speaker Pelosi's office and left a note. And what I was told was that the Capitol Police right now say, yes, they understand a lot of questions to answer, that in the moment they were overwhelmed and they made a decision to put a priority on the safety of the lawmakers and the staff, to get them to safe locations, understanding that that would mean that you're leaving offices unprotected, you're leaving entrances unprotected in some cases, and that they would deal with that after the fact. And now you see in these pictures, you know, the cavalry, if you will, has arrived. But there will be a lot of questions here, especially with the inauguration 2 weeks away.
You know, it's interesting, John, the Republican National Committee offices, the headquarters right near Capitol Hill, just like the Democratic National Committee. They have their offices right near Capitol Hill. We're just now being told by our Dan Marica and Mike Warren that the headquarters of the RNC was cleared after a suspicious device was found nearby. And the Democratic National Committee building was also evacuated after another suspicious package was being investigated. So this is really an expanding and very worrisome development that's unfolding.
Right, and without a doubt, not everybody there had any intention of anything like this, but they were there and part of it, and we're clearly here. You see, again, these are supporters of the president leaving alleged pipe bombs outside the offices of the Republican National Committee. So not a lot of thought going into this, and I'm being very polite. I could use much stronger words. So you have thugs here, knuckleheads, terrorists, criminals doing things. And again, there will be a lot of questions. How did this happen? Who was involved? I think it's a very fair question. And we'll know, I'm sure some people have been arrested and we haven't seen it yet, people on the inside. But what has been done to send a statement from law enforcement will be a very big question after this. And then there'll be longer term questions about, forgive my language, Wolf, but how the hell did this happen? This protest was not a secret. It was publicly announced. And the Capitol Police clearly did not believe that there was a threat to the building. And we have watched it played out. There was a very serious and significant threat to the building at a time The entire United States Congress was in there, again, including the Vice President of the United States and the Vice President-elect of the United States, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, and so on and so forth. So there are going to be giant questions about how this happened, the challenge now. And as you see, as Brian Todd noted, they have come down to the bottom of the steps now. They're slowly starting to move them away. Hopefully that happens without violence, but there'll be a lot of questions. We have a ton of questions now, and there will be more and more as we learn more.
You know, I'm just anxious to get your reaction. The president tweeted a little video that he filmed just outside the Oval Office over there, and among other things, once again, he repeated a lie. He said the election was stolen. He said he won a landslide election, which was, of course, another lie. But then he told these rioters, he said, so go home. We love you. You're very special. Very special. What was your reaction when you heard that?
Again, this is a consistent failure of leadership from this president to step up at moments of crisis and at moments when he needs to challenge his own supporters and tell them to behave and pay attention. So what does he say? Again, there were good people on both sides in Charlottesville. No, there were not. The QAnon conspiracy theorists are quackpots. The president refuses to criticize them because they support him. Here, in that video, yes, he said, please go home. That is a good thing. That was necessary. But all around it, before it, after it, sprinkled in with it, was continuing to say the election was stolen, we were defrauded, I know why you're mad, I'm supporting you. You cannot take one log off the fire and then pour a barrel of gasoline on the fire. That does not solve the problem. It may have given temporary respite to any of these protesters who maybe saw on their phone the president tweeted to go home. Maybe it was part of some of the people starting to go home. Maybe it's just the hour of the day. We don't know that. But that is not the answer. And again, we've watched this from the president consistently. He will say when he's questioned about this, I did tell them to go home. And when he's challenged on the fraud part, he'll shrug and find some reason to distract or cause some other thing. But he lost the election. He lost the election. That is not in dispute. He had several opportunities, more than 60, to make his case the way we do it here in the United States, in a court of law, where you are challenged to present evidence. And it's not just the Democrats saying this today. So to the Trump supporters out there, this is not repeating what the Democrats said. Judge after judge after judge after judge after judge, many of them Republicans, several of them Donald Trump appointees said, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, you have brought me zero credible evidence. Go away. This is over. The president needs to tell these people right there, it's over. Go home. Organize for the next election. Don't do this.
Yeah, it's so incredibly important. It looks, Brian Todd, like they're beginning to clear these individuals. They're beginning to tell them, you better get out of here. You better leave now. Otherwise, you're going to be arrested.
That's right, Wolf. We can kind of take you in a little bit here. I'll walk toward it a little bit. Riot police just kind of came to the foot of the steps and moved more rioters off the steps. So the rioters are pretty much completely cleared off the steps. These police that are in the green jackets kind of came and started lining the steps, and they're starting to push, excuse me, just have to walk around some people here, apologize for that. They're starting to push some of the perimeter here a little bit back toward 1st Street Northeast. So this is an area that was packed a short time ago, people lining the steps, on the balcony, on top of the cars. I got to say, most of them left on their own, Wolf. They were not pushed off in any forceful way by the police. The remnants of them that were there were walked down the stairs by about maybe 12, 13, 14 riot police that just kind of gently walked them down the stairs. Now, you do have, and Eddie, let's go over here to your right. You do have a little bit of a larger crowd over there by the north side of the Senate side of the Capitol, where we saw smoke grenades going off and the crowd kind of pushed back that way a short time ago. But it looks like that has calmed down as well. So, you know, we could see a calming of the situation here on the east side of the Capitol. We're also monitoring the situation on the west side of the Capitol, where it was very, very tense earlier today, as it was here. You know, we're standing in an area right now that was, when we got here this morning, it was barricaded off completely. You couldn't, I mean, there were police all over the place. There were bike rack barricades. There were several other barricades. And you got the sense that you just couldn't penetrate it. But, you know, clearly, the rioters took control. The police were overwhelmed. The police pushed back. And you saw the chaos ensue inside the building and all of that. So right now, they seem to have things under control. But I do have to tell you that most of that is due to the rioters leaving most of them on their own, Wolf.
Yeah, let's see what happens. These next few hours are going to be critically important. Only about 50 minutes until the D.C. curfew goes into effect, the 12-hour curfew from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Nobody's supposed to be out on the streets unless they have the complete authorization from the mayor herself. Pete Montine, you're still up there as well in a different location. Tell us what you're seeing.
Well, Wolf, this is not a protest, as others have mentioned. This is a mob. You know, we heard from President Trump earlier for this group to disperse peacefully. Not many people who really got that message. In fact, only a few minutes ago, there was a group of media equipment set over just east of the Capitol, and we saw a group of this mob essentially destroy it, using their fists, trying to dismantle the First Amendment coverage of what is happening here. It's ironic because the First Amendment protects us, but it also protects what the protesters here are doing. Not a protest anymore. At times, this is turning relatively violent. We have seen the movement of police not too long ago here. This is the Metropolitan Police Department of D.C., but we have yet to see the National Guard here. We have heard from D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser that the National Guard is on its way, and that state police from Maryland and Virginia will also be coming here to help. But I have to tell you that police are way outnumbered here by this pro-Trump group that essentially has taken over the Capitol. There is more police presence ramping up here as night falls on Washington, but this group seems to be in it for the long haul, and it seems like this will last well after sunset. Wolf?
Do we know, Pete, if there are still any of these rioters roaming around inside the House or the Senate, the U.S. Capitol, as we saw these ugly pictures emerge over the past couple hours?
I cannot speak to that, Wolf. There are plenty of people still outside here tonight, and I'm sure plenty of people would like to be inside, especially considering the fact it's going to be 30 degrees in Washington tonight. This is not going to be easy for the folks who are out here, but frankly, they shouldn't be here. This is a spot where you can't be as an everyday person, as a civilian. This is a spot that's very closed down, just above the Capitol Visitor Center. The east side of the Capitol and the steps here is a spot that the public would never be on, not even for special events. This is a spot that is very, very, very locked down, and folks are still here after nightfall in Washington.
Yeah, and there's still a coronavirus going on. Nobody's supposed to be inside the U.S. Capitol, but they broke windows and they entered into that building. Donnie O'Sullivan, CNN's Donnie O'Sullivan, is also on the scene for us. Where are you, Donnie? And tell us what's going on.
We're at the west side here of the U.S. Capitol, and people are streaming out of the grounds of the Capitol, and we've been asking them if they're proud of what's happened today, and most of them say they are. They view themselves as patriots, these Trump supporters. And when I asked them what they thought they were achieving by being here, by doing all of this violence, they said that they wanted to win back the election, and some of them are still living in this alternate reality, this alternate universe, where they believe that Joe Biden is not going to be inaugurated up on that rising in just 2 weeks' time. And Wolf, there is a sense here on the ground that it isn't over in terms of both trying to overturn the election, which is obviously a fantasy, but also that there could be more trouble to come here in Washington tonight. My producer overheard somebody saying as we were walking in here, it's going to get real tonight. Wolf?
Yeah, I suspect, Donnie, it's going to get even more intense in the next few days as we get closer and closer to the January 20th inauguration of the next president of the United States, Joe Biden. Alex Marquardt, you're getting some more information. Update our viewers.
Well, Wolf, we've moved back a little bit because since we spoke to you last, a large crowd of these rioters, a mob of them, descended on the press area where we were. I believe that was the area that our colleague Pete Montine was talking about. Clearly not fans of the way that we have been depicting them, which is a mob of violent rioters. And so now the question becomes, when does law enforcement go in and clear this area? It has just been a surreal afternoon watching this crowd go in and get into the Capitol building. So what we've seen over the course of the past couple hours is different kinds of law enforcement gathering around the Capitol. What you're seeing right here is Metropolitan Police Department, so Washington Police. As you've been noting, Wolf, we are under an hour now from the curfew. It is not clear whether they plan on going in and helping clear out those rioters. before the curfew, but that is certainly what we have seen in the past when there has been a curfew in this city. Now, there has been a steady stream of rioters coming from this northern side of the Capitol building, where they have been gathering for most of the afternoon, but there is still a significant contingent of them. And as you've heard from our other colleagues, many have said that they plan to stay here. And as someone was just mentioning, that it may get real overnight. I want to point out some of these rioters who are coming out from here. These are, I believe, Oath Keepers. We have seen members of that far-right extremist group that supports the president out here this afternoon, shouting insults at us, at members of the press, shouting insults at members of law enforcement, of the police. Things have been relatively quiet for a little while now. But as I was saying to you in our last time we spoke, this is still very much a standoff. We have not seen law enforcement go in and clear them out. Rioters are still in there. Law enforcement on the outskirts, on the perimeter of the Capitol building. And we will see what happens as we get closer to this curfew at 6 p.m. In just under an hour's time. Look at this scene, Wolf, here. This is more what I believe is Metropolitan Police. These guys are very much in riot gear, as you can see, head to toe with protection, helmets on, batons at the ready. They are going down Delaware Avenue. And we understand that there is all sorts of coordination going on between local law enforcement, federal law enforcement, the Capitol law enforcement, to clear out these rioters from the Capitol building, Wolf.
And I assume it's only going to get more intense. We just got a statement from the acting defense secretary, Miller, saying he's had separate conversations with Vice President Pence, Speaker Pelosi, Leader McConnell, Senator Schumer, Representative Hoyer in the House of Representatives, and says this. Let me read it. We have fully activated the D.C. National Guard to assist federal and local law enforcement as they work to peacefully address the situation. We are prepared to provide additional support as necessary and appropriate as requested by local authorities. And then adds with this. Our people are sworn to defend the Constitution and our democratic form of government, and they will act accordingly. So we see Capitol Police, we see local police from D.C., police are coming in from Maryland and Virginia, and military personnel. National Guard troops are coming in as well. We're going to see a whole lot more troops coming in, not just today, but in the next 14 days as we all get ready for the presidential inauguration. Pamela, what else are you learning?
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to tell you what we can't see inside the Capitol building right now, and that is law enforcement still clearing out the Capitol building as we speak. Rioters who trespassed went inside. Police are in there right now, still trying to make sure it is safe, secure, so that legislators can go back and finish their work under the Constitution. As we heard Alex Marquardt there say, he's not seeing a lot of activity on the outside in terms of clearing out folks. We're still seeing a lot of protesters there. But I am told from law enforcement that in addition to clearing out rioters inside of the Capitol building, they are also clearing them out at the inauguration stage and bleachers. So that is another area where the rioters took over. And I can tell you, law enforcement sources I'm speaking with, they are...